Good evening, members of the public, staff and councillors. I declare this general meeting of electors of Wednesday the 31st of March 2025, let's make that Monday 31st of March 2025, opened now at 6:30 p.m. I'll advise all members of the gallery that the meeting this evening is being live streamed. If you're asking a public question, making a statement or putting forward a motion, this will be live streamed. Members of the public are reminded that no other visual or audio recording of this meeting by any other means is allowed. The procedures for this meeting this evening are specified in the Act and the Local Government Administration Regulations 1996. The legislation states that the procedure to be followed at the meeting is determined by the person presiding at the meeting. The meeting will be conducted generally in a manner consistent with the Shire's standing orders. Regulation 18 of the Local Government Administration Regulations 1996 states that 1. Each elector who is present at a general or special meeting of electors is entitled to one vote on each matter to be decided at the meeting, but does not have to vote. Number 2, all decisions at a general or special meeting of electors are to be made by a simple majority of votes. And then number 3, voting at a general or special meeting of electors is to be conducted so that no voter's vote is secret. That is, we can see everyone's vote. The structure of the meeting tonight will be public questions of which prior notice has been given, public questions received from the floor, public statements of which prior notice has been given, public statements received from the floor, motions of which prior notice has been given, and then motions received from the floor. Each elector wishing to ask a question may ask a maximum of 3 questions related to the purpose of this evening's meeting. Public statements must not be greater than 3 minutes in length. Motions may be debated with speakers for and against the motion. No speaker may speak for greater than 5 minutes regarding a motion. The provisions relate to conduct that operate in the standing orders are to apply. This means that each person present is to extend due courtesy and respect to all in attendance. Electors were provided with a voting card, and I think there's actually 2 voting cards provided to electors as they've come in. When a motion is called for a vote, electors are to raise the card to determine if the motion is carried or lost. I might just ask the CEO, there's 2 different colours, is that right, Mr CEO? A white one and a green card?
That's correct, Mr President, yep.
And what's the difference?
The green one is for yes and the white one is for no.
Perfect, thank you. As we said, so then you'll raise your card to determine if the motion is carried or lost. Decisions made at the electors' meeting this evening will be considered at a future council meeting in accordance with legislation. That'll bring us to agenda item number 1, which is attendance and apologies. I have received an apology from Councillor Shay Mack, who is unwell, and have just had a message from the Deputy Shire President, Councillor Tricia Duggan, who's on her way. There are no other apologies. That now brings us to agenda item number 2. Agenda item number 2 is the annual report incorporating the annual financial statements for the year ending 30th of June 2024. Agenda item 2.1 is the President's report. So good evening, residents and ratepayers. I'm pleased to present the Shire of Serpentine Jarrahdale's 2023-2024 annual report, reflecting significant achievements across community development, advocacy and infrastructure planning. These accomplishments underscore our unwavering commitment to fostering a thriving, livable and connected community. One of the year's most notable milestones was the adoption of the Council Plan 2023 to 2033. This comprehensive 10-year strategy outlines a clear vision and priorities for our Shire's growth, ensuring we meet the needs of our rapidly expanding population while planning for sustainable development. During the latter half of the financial year, we intensified advocacy to secure vital infrastructure and resources in the lead up to the 2025 state and the recently announced federal election. This included high-level discussions with key government leaders and strategic collaboration with the City of Rockingham on critical road repairs, such as Munajong Road. These initiatives are pivotal to support the Shire's growth with robust and future-ready infrastructure. As one of the fastest growing local government areas in Australia, the Shire prioritised managing growth to enhance residents' lifestyles and our opportunities. A standout achievement was our focus on youth engagement. The second annual Career and Enterprise Expo was held in partnership with the Byford Secondary College, and the launch of the Youth Skill Up program exemplify our dedication to equipping young people with valuable skills and connections to potential employers. Our community events continue to foster unity and a sense of belonging. The Serpentine Jarrahdale Christmas Street Festival and the Christmas Lights competition brought joy and celebration to everyone in the Shire, showcasing our vibrant community and the spirit of our residents. Advocating to the state government Metronet project, we achieved significant progress on the Byford Rail extension, which will greatly enhance connectivity to Perth and set the foundation of the Byford Town Centre. The new train station is set to become a dynamic hub, supporting local businesses and creating a stronger sense of community. With an estimated 3,450 daily commuters, this transformative project will substantially improve residents' quality of life, and I'm personally enjoying the opportunity to jump on the train to go to Optus Stadium and watch the Dockers beat the Eagles again. In alignment with our commitment to environmental sustainability, the Shire installed 2 new water drinking stations in local reserves to support and protect native wildlife, particularly the endangered black cockatoo. This initiative highlights our dedication to preserving the natural environment and fostering a thriving ecosystem. The progress achieved in the 2023-2024 financial year is a testament to the Shire's commitment to our residents. As we continue to strive towards our shared vision of a welcoming and inclusive community, we remain dedicated to building on these achievements and working collaboratively with all stakeholders. This report reflects our collective efforts and demonstrates the Shire's focus on creating a welcoming community where everyone feels at home. That brings us on to agenda item 2.2, which is Chief Executive Officer's report. I'd now like to ask Mr Paul Martin, the Chief Executive Officer, to read his report.
Thank you, Mr President, and welcome everybody tonight, and thank you for coming. If it's okay, I'll just read my statement straight from the annual report. The 2023-24 financial year has been a period of substantial growth and transformation for the Shire of Serpentine Jarrahdale, marked by significant achievements and enhanced community engagement. The Shire successfully met 3 key performance indicators outlined in the corporate business plan. Notably, 83% of strategic operating projects scheduled for completion were delivered on time. Additionally, 92% of planned road projects were constructed within the year. This included vital upgrades to Gossage Road, Mundajong Road, Kingsbury Drive, Jarrahdale Road, as well as rehabilitation works on Briggs and Nettleton Roads. For the 3rd consecutive year, the Shire maintained a financial health indicator above 70, which is considered sustainable from the Department of Local Government, achieving a score of 73 in 23-24. This performance was acknowledged by the Office of the Auditor General in its Local Government 22-23 Financial Audit Results Report, which recognised the Shire as best practice entity for the timeliness and quality of its financial reportings and control. So well done to that team. The implementation of OneCom, a powerful information sharing and operational efficiency platform, has progressed significantly. Operational crews have already adopted the system, resulting in faster response times for maintenance and repairs, including urgent issues such as fallen trees. These efficiencies are expected to grow as OneCom becomes fully integrated into daily operations. The Shire's volunteer bushfire brigades have also embraced OneCom to streamline the management of resources, time and equipment. This integration allows for greater focus on training and life-saving services, enhancing overall efficiency and responsiveness. Following the closure of the waste transfer station, due to asbestos contamination, the Shire implemented a range of measures to mitigate the impact on residents. These included scheduled green waste collection services, a bookable hard waste verge collection service, and the provision of tip passes to the Armidale landfill and recycling facility, ensuring residents could easily dispose of bulky waste. Mundajong remains a key planning priority with the 3 new additional estates under development. Over the next 30 years, these projects are expected to deliver nearly 20,000 new homes, addressing critical housing needs in WA. The Shire continues to collaborate with developers and the state government to ensure the necessary infrastructure is in place to support this growth. The Shire launched a new customer contact centre this year, using a cloud-based system to improve resident engagement, address service gaps and enhance communication efficiency. Significant upgrades are also made to the Shire offices, including a new toilet block and shower facilities, a modern kitchen and a revamped lounge area. Improvements to the depot included a workshop extension, a shade canopy, a paved patio and enhanced access to amenities. These enhancements aim to create a safer, more collaborative and productive workspace. To further enhance service delivery, the Shire introduced the position of Executive Manager Operations. This role oversees parks and gardens, facility maintenance, waste and fleet services, while strengthening the capacity of the Infrastructure Directorate to deliver major capital works programs. The achievements of 23-24 reflect the dedication of Council, staff and the community, and these collective efforts have allowed the Shire to achieve significant milestones and lay a strong foundation for continued progress. Together we're shaping a future for the Shire that's thriving, livable and connected.
Thank you very much, Mr Martin. That brings us on to agenda item 2.3, which is the Auditor's Report, and I would now like to ask the Director of Corporate Services, Mr Fraser Sullivan, to deliver the Auditor's Report on behalf of the Auditor. Thank you, Director.
Thank you, Mr President. So I'll begin by reading out the audit report or the salient pieces, and then I'll go on with a small presentation about the financial status of the organisation or the Shire, your Shire. So to the Council of the Shire of Serpentine Jarrahdale, the Independent Auditor's Report. Opinion. I have audited the financial report of the Shire of Serpentine Jarrahdale, which comprises the Statement of Financial Position as at 30 June 2024, the Statement of Comprehensive Income, Statement of Changes in Equity, Statement of Cash Flows and Statement of Financial Activity for the year then ended. Notes comprising a summary of material accounting policies and other explanatory information. In my opinion, the financial report is based on proper accounts and records, presents fairly in all material respects the results of the operation of the Shire for the year ended 30 June 2024 and its financial position at the end of that period, is in accordance with the Local Government Act 1995 and, to the extent that they are not inconsistent with the Act, Australian accounting standards. So essentially what they're saying there is that we've got the gold star, an unqualified audit report, and the point of that is that we can rely on this information for decision-making purposes. So, but I do want to just draw one fact out, which is an emphasis of matter, which is a restatement of comparative balances, and I'll talk a little bit more about this in my presentation later. But I draw attention to note 34 of the financial report, which states that the amounts reported in the previously issued 30 June 2023 financial report have been restated and disclosed as comparatives in this financial report. My opinion is not modified in respect of this matter, in that the report remains unqualified. So those who have seen me present before would know that whilst the Shire is a not-for-profit organisation, it should make a profit, because unlike private enterprise, the asset that they are trying to grow is their cash asset to distribute as dividends. However, as a local government, the asset we're attempting to grow is community assets like roads, parks, footpaths, that sort of thing. So I'm pleased to announce that the Shire for the year ended 30 June 2024, net profit was $14,731,025, unfortunately compared to the previous year of $23 million. But this was primarily due to an increase in depreciation expense of $4.2 million following a revaluation of our infrastructure assets in the prior year, and we got $1.6 million less in gifted assets. So the financial health indicator is a measure of a local government's overall financial health and is calculated based on allocating a score for a number of ratios against which all local governments are measured. Interestingly, changing as we speak, but we'll go on with what we have. So the financial health indicator for the year ended 30 June 2024 is 72, which is greater than the benchmark of 70. Pleasing outcome. So these are the ratios that they look at, and so the current ratio is your ability to pay your debts as and when they fall due. So the benchmark is 1, we achieve 1.41, so we can pay our debts as and when they fall due. 63% of our assets remain to be consumed as opposed to a benchmark of 50, so again, we're ahead of where we need to be there. The asset renewal funding ratio, we're at 1.27, so that measures how much we plan to spend against how much we should be spending. And so that's a very excellent result, that 1.27. I expect to see that deteriorating in the future. However, as the numbers in there are based on old asset management plans, and we're about to revise those in the near future. The asset sustainability ratio, 0.9, we equal the benchmark, and that means that our spending on replacing our assets is also equivalent to the depreciation of the assets. And later on, you'll see why that's important and is, in fact, a really deep goal of this organisation to get to this position. The debt service cover ratio easily got to benchmark there, being tenfold over what we need to be. They only expect us to be able to pay our debts twice over. So, and again, this one may deteriorate because we've got 2 significant projects on the books that we're about to start construction on. And whilst there is some developer contributions that will fund those projects, we may need to pre-fund them using debt. So it's be timely that we can deploy that debt capacity. Operating surplus ratio. So interestingly, we didn't make benchmarks there, and perhaps as a community member you might be happy about that, because essentially it means that we rely on grants to fund our operations here. Obviously the people who put this ratio in would prefer that we didn't need those grants and we could be self-reliant, but so perspective, I guess. And own source coverage ratio, again, we handsomely meet benchmark there. So this page we've got a little, we can start to see a bit of trend of those ratios, and you can see the third one down, that asset renewal funding ratio. You can see a big jump this year. As I said, likely that will change next year. As to that debt service ratio, because we may need to call on that debt capacity to fund those major projects that we're about to embark on constructing. So, now, there was one item of significance in the management letter, and that's that emphasis of matter. So during the year, so we've probably, I guess, the last 5 years, we've spent an enormous amount of time, energy and money in getting very accurate asset data, numerous surveys, and as we've gone along, we've been finding assets that the Shire received years ago that weren't recorded in our records, so couldn't be prioritised for maintenance or renewal, those sorts of things. So that's what they're pointing out here, that is good practice that those assets be recorded and that we conduct appropriate maintenance and renewal of those things. It's interesting that we've almost finished the project and they've decided to raise it in our audit processes, but anyway. Perhaps lost contact. Going twice. Okay, so I just put this slide in as it just shows the growth that we've been experiencing. The growth comes from 2 areas, both contributed assets, or 3 areas, contributed assets, constructed assets, but also revaluation. So you can see there that we had a revaluation. I note the heading on 2024 is missing, so we're up to $743 million in assets under management. And as everybody can see, the subdivisions going on in the district, so we should see that number continue with that sort of exponential type growth. And I think this slide above all highlights the problem that we face in this Shire. And that is, you can see that under that total roads column, that there's City of Gosnells and the City of Armidale have 811 kilometres in assets, 830 kilometres respectively, but they have massive rate bases, 82 million and 88 million respectively. We have nearly the same length of road, 798, but only 32 million as a rate base. So to attempt to keep our roads in condition, according to those councils, is a very difficult job. And we'll talk a little bit more about how we try to ameliorate that issue as we go along. Interestingly, that our number used to say a little over 800, but we've managed to give away Rowley Road back to Armidale and Thomas Road back to Main Road, so that's brought it under 800, but I expect it'll probably be at about 810 when I'm talking to you this time next year. So just because of the amount of development coming on, that's going to keep going up. But it was a good result for the council or for the community to have other people take on the funding of those roads. Now, interestingly, I talked about our ongoing surveying and building up of our asset data. I'd just like to point out there the condition 4, 22%, and condition 5. So essentially 40% of our road asset is in poor to very poor condition. And in fact, and even 30% of it is in just good or just fair condition. So you can almost say like 70% of our road assets are under pressure. I think everybody here and certainly Facebook knows that roads are a major issue in this shire. To fix that, that's 100, the number there at the bottom of those, condition 5, so to fix those condition 5s, to bring them into serviceable condition, and condition 4, there's 114 million and 201 million respectively. So we essentially need $315 million to fix the problem with a $30 million a year rate base. So this slide just talks about what are our grant options there. So this slide pretty much describes about $10 million of grants available each year to fix that $300 million problem. But to go along with that, you need to match. So they'll give you half or a third, usually 1/3, 2/3. We need to put in a third, and the funder will put in 2/3. So we do have to have something of our own from rates and other funds to attract these grants. And these are all competitive processes. You put in your projects, every other council puts in their project, and whoever has the worst road, I guess, wins. But we can win more grants if we have got more matching. So our future financial challenges are obviously in this asset management space. So obviously the auditor has noted it. Matching shire funds for grants. So we've kind of got to that. We're winning about $5 million in new road funds each year, and that's the limit of our matching capacity. We could win more. The roads are in poor enough condition that we could win more, but we just don't have the matching funds to attract those grants. And obviously the ongoing cost escalations. You saw in that growth of the asset base there from 500 million to 750 million. Obviously a significant amount of that growth was just in revaluation. Things just cost more now. So there's those three pressures. That brings me to the end of my presentation. But the thing I wanted to leave you with it is that every asset, every resource this organisation has at its command is deployed to the betterment, within reasonable risk management tolerances, of course, but everything is deployed towards the betterment of this community. And that's my...
Thank you very much, Director. That brings us on to agenda item 2.4. Agenda item 2.4 is receiving of the annual report incorporating the annual financial statements for the year ending 30th of June 2024. And before I put the motion to the floor, there are copies of the annual report at the front as you've registered to vote. You should have been given... Yes?
I actually have a question regarding the annual report, which may lead to a motion. May I ask that now before you put it to the
Sure.
floor?
I'm more than happy for you to do that.
Okay.
Yes. Yep. You need to come forward to the microphone, please, because it is being live streamed.
Thank you. Okay, so my question relates to the Shire's omission of library services from the annual report. Going back the last 7 years, there is mention of library services. Now, considering this facility is currently the premier facility in this Shire, I would like to know why this has been omitted from the annual report. You even talk about a project that the library ran itself and failed to mention that the staff responsible were employed at the library. Now, libraries play a crucial role in education, community engagement, digital access. They provide the services, particularly in a time of cost of living crisis for our most vulnerable people in our community. Yet the Shire has neglected to celebrate the efforts of those staff members.
Thank you for the question. It's very remiss of me, and I do apologise. Can you please state your name and your suburb of residence?
Okay, I live in the Shire. My name's Belinda Dunkley.
I actually asked Ms Dunkley what suburb you live in.
I am not saying what suburb I live in. I live in the Shire of Serpentine Jarrahdale.
Okay, that's fantastic. Director of Community Engagement, are you able to provide a response. If you're just happy to wait. Is it Miss or Mrs. Dunkley?
Miss.
Miss Dunkley, if you could just wait a moment, please, just while the Director
No
has
worries,
a look.
that's fine.
Thank you.
Through you, Mr. President, if I could get clarification, is Ms Dunkley referring to the fact that the library services is not referenced in the organisational structure, which is...
Well, that is one of my points, yes.
Thank you,
And if
Miss
you say
Miss
you won't-
Dunkley.
Sorry?
Miss Dunkley, this is my meeting and I'll preside over it. Okay? The Director was
He
trying
asking me
to...
a question.
He was trying to ask you a question. You interrupted him. Please do not. Director, can you please go back and just confirm the question that Ms Dunkley's asking?
I will draw Ms Dunkley's attention to page 9 of the annual report, where we celebrate some of our key achievements over the past 12 months, and one of those is the inaugural Community History Awards that was developed and delivered by the SJ Library Services.
Does it?
Sorry, Director, keep going.
Thank you. While specific service areas may not be mentioned explicitly within the annual report, it is no reflection on how the Shire or Council values the services, programs or activities that service team may have delivered throughout the financial year. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Ms Dunkley, does that answer your question or would you like another question?
No, if you look at the last 7 years of reports, the library services is actually celebrated, and this year it's been swept under the carpet. Now, it's an embarrassment to the Shire.
Sorry, Ms
really.
Dunkley, is there a question there? There's time for you to make a statement later if you so wish.
Well, Director of Community Engagement has not answered my question. Why is there not a library report? Where are the statistics? Because they're created every year.
Thank you for the question. So I think the Director has answered some way your first part of your question, but I will go back to the Director now if he can please provide some more clarification for that question. Thank you, Director.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for the question. The Shire reports on the performance of all service teams quarterly through our corporate business plan reporting, and those reports are presented to Council and available on the Shire's website. So that is one, I guess, mechanism as to how the Shire reports on the performance and celebrates its successes through the quarterly corporate business planning report.
Thank you, Director. Ms Dunkley, you've asked 2 questions. You're only entitled to 3. Did you want to ask a 3rd question now, or are you happy with the response?
Well, regardless of what I ask, you guys are going to pass this document with, statistics missing. Because if you look back at at least the last 7 years of reports,
Yep.
there are statistics from the library service and an actual report. And I can tell you a few of those years contain multiple page reports. Now, I understand the library...
Sorry,
is your phone more important
Ms Dunkley,
than is your phone more important than this?
that's your 3rd question. The answer is no. I'm timing your question because,
Whatever.
as I said at the start of the meeting, you're entitled to 3 questions at 3 minutes each.
And I was
Okay.
doing that.
So
You
at-
rudely interrupted me.
I didn't interrupt you at all. I'm now going to say to you, are you asking a question or are you making a statement? Ms Dunkley, if you'd like to make a statement, you can do.
I'm
That's
actually
later on the
absolutely
agenda.
asking a question.
Okay, this is your
I
3rd
asked the question.
Okay, thank you.
Why, if you look back through the last 7 years, at least the last 7 years, there is an actual library report, yet in this year's report, there is nothing. You're ghosting the service.
Thank you for the 3rd question. I think the Director or Community, I'll start again, the CEO would like to answer the question. Thank you, Mr CEO.
Thanks, Mr. President, and thanks, Ms Dunkley, for the question. I guess this year, as the Director said, we've tried to create an annual report that focuses on some high-level achievements across all the areas, and it's a move away from a detailed report into every service team. For example, there may be other teams in the list there that are not picked up, It's good feedback to get. We're happy to take the feedback on for next year, and we can certainly include some stats in the next year's report about the library. We see this probably more as a trend of where annual reports are going, to be high-level summaries and statistics rather than long, detailed reports. But maybe there's a balance to achieve there, and we're happy to take that feedback on board, and we can certainly...
I appreciate that, Mr CEO. It's really important to acknowledge the impact of the services, not just the statistics. Yep. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Dunkley. So as I was saying, there is the actual annual report that is available at the front. I'm hoping everyone has seen that. That being the case, agenda item 2.4, as mentioned, is receiving of the annual report incorporating the annual financial statements for the year ending 30th June 2024. Is there a member of the public who is happy to move that motion, or a councillor, to receive the 2023-2024 annual report? Thank you, Councillor Duggan. Is there someone who's happy to second receiving of the 2023-2024 annual report?
I'm happy to second if it is noted that the public gallery members are not happy.
Yeah, sorry, Mrs Rich, I'm happy for that to occur, but you'd need to come forward on the microphone because, as you can appreciate, this is being recorded, and just for transparency, people at home need to know what's being said. Thank you, Mrs Rich.
Thank you. I am happy to second the motion as long as it is noted as part of the motion that there is community members that are not happy with the way that the annual report has been presented for this financial year as it stands.
Thank you, Mrs Rich. That is a difference to the motion that has been moved by Councillor Duggan. Councillor Duggan, are you happy to include that in the motion as moved?
I'd like to just see it written first, please.
Thank you.
Perhaps, Mrs Rich, if you can provide the Minute Secretary some more wording of what you were hoping the note to be.
That there are community members who are unhappy with the presentation of the content of the annual report as presented at the electors meeting, and tonight's date, please.
Sorry, Mrs Rich, did you want to be a little bit more thorough and mention the part? Because that is quite ambiguous, but again, you're setting the motion. So
Yeah, I'm happy to have it listed as of what part it actually is that they're not happy with.
Would you be able to give some input then to the Minute Secretary about what you think should be put in there?
That there are community members who are unhappy with the presentation of the content, with the omission of library services from the annual report as presented at the annual electors meeting held 31st of March 2025.
Thank you, Mrs Rich. I think, nearly there. Mrs Rich, are you happy with that wording that's on the screen? Hopefully you can see it there. If it does assist you, Mrs Rich, I'm happy to read it out for you.
That's fine, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Duggan, are you happy with that alternate wording to your motion that you've moved?
No, thanks. I would like Mrs Rich to consider an alternate wording, that being that the annual report is a true representation, however notes some community members are dissatisfied with the layout of the annual report, in particular the library services report.
Thank you, Councillor Duggan. Mrs Rich, you've come back. Did you want to say anything to that?
I'm sorry, I won't accept that wording. I attended the Shire Administration Service a number of weeks ago to pick up a printed copy of the annual report, and I was informed by the staff at that time that they did not have printed copies to be handed out due to there being mistakes or errors in the report that needed to be rectified before it could be printed. I have not seen the report come back to council to have that rectified since it was adopted by council. So I am unsure of whether it has been amended. So with the fact that I am unsure if it has been amended, I am not happy to actually accept it as a true account. I'm happy with the wording that I've put forward, and I'm happy to second with that wording to accept the report.
Thank you, Mrs Rich. Councillor Duggan, are you happy? You've already indicated that you're not happy, so would you like me to call for another seconder?
Yes, please, Mr President.
Is there someone else who's happy to second the motion as moved by Councillor Duggan? I'm happy to second it. Is anyone opposed with the motion, which is that the annual report of the Shire of Serpentine Jarrahdale for the year 23-24, incorporating the 23-24 annual financial statements and the 23-24 auditors report, be received? Is anyone opposed to that? Thank you. Thank you, the two ladies in the front and Mrs Rich. And the other lady on the other side, and the other lady in the green shirt. Thank you. We'll go to the debate now. So I'd ask Councillor Duggan to please open the debate.
Thanks, Mr President. The annual report, as been explained to us by our directors earlier, has been based on the auditor's report. It is determined to be a true reflection. I understand the concerns of the community members who feel that it doesn't have the layout that they would like to see. However, I believe that, to not accept it as a true representation of where the Shire is at is remiss. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duggan. I will speak to the motion. Quite simply, the motion is to receive the annual report of 2023 and 24. It's simply to receive it. I'll spend a few moments talking about some comments that were made by a member of the public. This is a report that had some delays in being printed. To answer the concerns raised, yes, there were mistakes with the 23-24 annual report. I don't know if that's funny for members of the public. They're obviously too busy looking at something to even know I'm talking to them. Gentlemen, if you find this funny, I might ask you to walk outside. Thank you. As I was saying, this is a report that was had some mistakes in it, and I'm happy to say there were mistakes in it because, ladies and gentlemen, no one's perfect. But what we do when we identify a mistake is we fix it. There's been plenty of opportunities for any members of the public to come forward and raise concerns about a perceived omission of something in the report. A member of the public who used to work in the library, and I thank the member for their work in the library, has decided to raise this evening. There was 2 answers provided by the Director of Community Engagement. Both of those answers allayed, certainly I would submit, allayed the concerns. They were answered directly and effectively. Not only that, the Chief Executive Officer then stepped in and answered those third question. The key thing that the CEO said is that this is not a document that is completely thorough in terms of the content. This is a document that is high level. You can go through this document and, as it says on the front page, it's an annual report. 2023-2024. There are things in there that could be submitted. There are things in there that could be added. But ladies and gentlemen, if we did, the document would be bigger than 25 encyclopedias. We can't go through every single thing. We cannot put every single thing into the annual report. Irrespective of people shaking their heads and thinking that there's some type of conspiracy here with the annual report, I am damn proud of this annual report, and you'll see that in the front page, the first thing that's on there is a Shire President's report. I'm not going to put my name, my integrity, or my position as the firstly directly elected Shire President to a document that is wrong. I am not going to put my standards, my integrity on the line to a document that is wrong. There were some concerns with this document. Those concerns were spoken to by the CEO and the directors. The director, the CEO and all staff were agile, they pivoted and they changed the things in the document. The front page was wrong. I raised a concern after a member of the public saying to me it's inappropriate to put a Korea fire station tanker on the front page. What did we do as a Shire? What do we do as your elected members? We changed it because we listened to the community. Not at one point did anyone in the community come forward and say, put more in the document about the library. Put more in the document for things that we want in there. We work damn hard as a Shire, we work damn hard as elected members, and the staff work damn hard to do the best thing. You've just heard the Director of Community Engagement answer the questions. You just heard the Director of Corporate Services explain the report that we got from the Auditor. Stop worrying about your own petty little missions and look at this document for what it is. Who would like to speak against the motion? Thank you, Mrs. Rich.
Annual general electors meetings are held for the community to accept the annual report of the organisation. It is not held for council to accept their own report. It is held for community to view and accept the annual report of the organisation. The annual report is presented to council, to an OCM, for it to be accepted by council to then come to the electors meeting. For you to make changes to that annual report that is presented to council, it must come back to an OCM and have the changes made in direct view of your community. It is not up to councillors or staff to make those changes. It's through process to provide transparency and accountability to the community of Serpentine Jarrahdale to make those changes. Community members have come here tonight through the process provided to them and have stood up and asked questions. They have put forward their views through the process provided to them to then be belittled, which is inappropriate. They have every right to ask questions and put forward their thoughts and views on the way that the annual report has been presented. The staff here work extremely hard under very trying conditions. And I can guarantee that they go home at night and think, have we done the right thing? They have always done the right thing. They try their absolute hardest to do the best for all of the people in this community. The information that was put forward to be noted was not disparaging. What it did was provide feedback to the organisation so that it was captured for future years. It was not worded in a way that was condemning of anybody. Given that, and the way that members here tonight in the public gallery have been attacked, I find it extremely inappropriate that two councillors are the mover and seconder for an annual report that is to be accepted by the community. That is why I cannot accept the motion as it stands at this point in time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs Rich. Is there anyone who'd like to speak for the motion? That being the case, we will go to close the motion. But before I allow the Deputy Shire President to close, as a presiding member, I'll just correct a couple of points that were just made. The last point is I'm not a councillor. I'm a president, not a councillor. The second point is if you read the motion is not to accept, but it's to receive. So those two things need to be corrected. Deputy Shire President Duggan, would you like to close the debate?
Thank you, Mr President. I note that transparency is a word that gets thrown around very often, and once again it's come up again this evening. One thing that I do love about our Shire is that we are all available. Every single one of us councillors is available. Our phone numbers, our email addresses, everything is available 24/7, and trust me, I get phone calls 24/7. What that means is these questions, which I appreciate have been expressed by Ms Dunkley and supported by Mrs Rich, they have a basis in that they feel that they have concerns that these weren't included when they have been included previously. It is a shame that those weren't raised at an earlier time, so perhaps that could have been addressed. Certainly it's something that, you know, as the President said, we can look at for next year, but it is so vitally important that we don't recognise one group of Shire staff over another, that we have all Shire staff that feel like they are important and valued, because by gracious, the ones that I talk to certainly from me are, and from the councillors that I work with. So with that, I put to the vote that the annual report be received. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duggan. Now, my understanding is white, Mr CEO, is to vote for? Or green is for?
Green's for.
Green is for, okay. So those of you who would like to vote for, you need to put your green cards up. So I'll now call for all those in favour of the motion as on the screen. Please raise your green cards. All those against? Did someone count? I didn't count. Did someone count? I didn't vote. So 5-5, is it? 5-7. 5-4, 7 against. I can't hear you. Sorry. 5-4, 7 against. The motion is lost. 5-7. Thank you, Mrs Rich. Please come forward to the table and do so.
I would like to move to receive the annual report with the note wording that I had provided earlier, please.
Thank you, Mrs Rich. Do we still have that, Madam Secretary? Thank you. Are you happy with that, Mrs Rich, as written on the screen, so that the annual report for the Shire of Serpentine, Jarrahdale, for the year 23-24, incorporating the 23-24 annual financial statements and the 23-24 auditors report be
Yes,
received?
thank you.
Notes that there are community members who are unhappy with the omission of the library services in the annual report as presented at the annual electors meeting being held on Monday, 31st March 2025. Sorry for doing that properly, Mrs Rich, but as you'd be aware, we need to do that properly. Is there someone who is happy to second that motion? Thank you. Can you please state your name?
Kelly Berry.
Thank you. Ms or Mrs? Ms Berry. Thank you, Ms Berry. Is there anyone opposed to this motion? Motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. That brings us on to agenda item number 3. Agenda item number 3 is business. Agenda item 3.1 is public questions, of which prior notice has been given, and I'd ask Ms Kelly Berry to please come forward. Please state your suburb of residence before you ask your first question.
Due to legal proceedings, I will not be stating my suburb today. I will just say I am a resident of the Shire of Serpentine, Jarrahdale, as ticked off on the registry with voting cards.
Thank you, Ms Berry. That suffices. Thank you.
I have question number 1. What was the corporate communications budget in the financial years of 2023, 24 and 25?
Thank you for your first question, Ms Berry. I would ask the Director of Corporate Community Engagement, the Director of Community Engagement, please provide a response. Thank you, Director.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Ms Berry, for the question. For 22-23 was $538,862. For 2023-2024, $699,139. And for 2024-2025, $901,688.
Quite an increase.
Thank you, Director. Ms Berry, would you like to ask your second question, please?
Sure, that was quite an increase, wasn't it?
Sorry,
2.
was that a question, Ms Berry, or was that rhetorical?
No, my next question is number 2.
Thank
What
you.
is the comparison between the corporate communications budget and the commitments received for 2017, 21 and 25 state elections?
Thank you for your second question, Ms Berry. I would ask the Director of Community Engagement to provide a response, please.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thanks for the follow-up question, Ms Berry. For the 2016-17 financial year, the corporate communications budget was $346,041. For successful state election commitments, Shire officers are unaware of Council having endorsed election priorities for the 2017 state government election. For 2020-2021, the corporate communications budget was $461,405, and successful commitments aligned to the Council's endorsed election advocacy priorities were $30.6 million for the Byford Health Hub, $18 million for hypergrowth road upgrades, $11.5 million for Stage 4 of the Byford Secondary College, and $1.3 million for Nature Play and Water Splash Park, which was subsequently reallocated to the Byford Bike Pump Track project. The Byford Secondary College and Byford Health Hub projects are being delivered by the state government. And for 2024-2025, the corporate communications budget was $901,688, and successful commitments aligned to the Shire's endorsed election advocacy priorities were $17 million for hypergrowth road upgrades, $10 million towards the Briggs Park precinct, and $5 million towards the Jarrahdale Trail Centre.
Thank you, Director. Ms Berry, you're only entitled to ask 3 questions. You have another 2. Would you like to pick one of those 2 that you'd like to ask?
Not really. They're all important questions, and it is the electors' meeting. It's not a normal council meeting.
Yep. As explained at the start of the meeting, you're entitled to 3 questions. What I'm happy to do is for you to ask one more, and maybe another member of the public could ask that other question that you don't get to ask now.
Okay. My third question is, what is the comparison between the corporate communications budget and the commitments for the 2019, 22 and 25 federal elections?
Thank you for your third question, Ms Berry. Again, I would ask the Director of Community Engagement to please provide a response.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Ms. Berry, for your third question. In the 2018-19 financial year, the corporate communications budget was $605,722, and Shire officers are unaware of any federal election commitments that were made aligned to Council's endorsed election priorities. For the 21-22 financial year, the corporate communications budget was $445,881, and successful federal election commitments was $8 million for Peel Regional Trails funding, which the Shire secured $750,000 for the Gurralong Brook Car Park project and $1.3 million for the new Jarrahdale Horse Trail. The Jarrahdale Horse Trail project is being delivered by the Department of Biodiversity, Conservation and Attractions. And for the 2024-25 financial year, the corporate communications budget was $901,688. And given that the federal election is being held on the 3rd of May this year, at which time the Shire will know the outcome of its election advocacy.
Just on that last one, Ms Berry, we have had the federal member for Canning, the Honourable Andrew Hastie, commit $2.4 million to the Munajong netball courts if it is a Dutton coalition government. Thank you, Ms Berry.
Thank you.
But I'm happy for you to give that fourth question to someone else who'd like them to ask it. I would now like to ask Mrs Michelle Rich from Serpentine to please come forward and ask her 2 questions.
Thank you. My first question this evening is, could the CEO please provide a listing of all internal and external committees that have councillor representation, the frequency of meetings and the attendance register for each committee, please?
I thank you for your question, Mrs Rich, and would ask the Director of Corporate Services to please provide a response.
Thank you for the question, Ms Rich. That'll take a little time to compile. I'll need to take that on notice and provide a written answer.
Thank you.
I would say, Mrs Rich, I'm trying to find the page in the annual report, but there is a reflection in there on page 15 of some internal committees that councillors are a part of, both from July 23 to October 23 and then October 23 to June 24. So hopefully that goes some way to answering some of your question. Would you like to ask your second question, please?
Thank you. My second question is, did Shire officers seek and provide legal advice to councillors prior to the March 2025 OCM regarding item 9.3 notice of motion, request Main Roads WA remove speed limits?
Thank you for your second question, Mrs Rich. I would ask the Director of Infrastructure Services to please provide a response.
Thank you for your question. No. Following discussions with Main Roads WA, the request to remove the speed limit signage was to bring the Shire into line with Main Roads speed zoning within the state for substandard roads. Main Roads will be the ultimate decision maker and they have the details of the condition of the roads in question.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Mrs Rich, you are entitled to 3 questions. Would you like to ask the question while you're there? Another one?
Thank you. My third question is, have councillors been provided with a copy and walked through the speed audit report prepared for the Shire in 2024?
Thank you for the question, Mrs Rich. Director, Infrastructure Services, are you able to provide a response, please?
Yes, the audit reports have been provided to councillors.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, they are the only suite of questions that we've received on notice. I'm now happy to take questions from the floor, and I would remind people 3 questions each and 3 minutes per question. Thank you, Mr Denholm. And again, I would ask that people state their name for the record and their suburb of residence. And please, any questions, please remember to be respectful to staff and councillors.
Always.
Thank you, Mr Denham. I know you are, thank you.
Bill Denham, Carricup. My first question is on a different subject. If we have any drones, how many and how old are they? Strange question, but relevant, I think.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Mr Denholm. I would ask the Director of Development Services to please provide a response.
Thank you, Mr President, and thank you, Mr Denham, for your question. My understanding, we have one drone. Well, I know it's in my department, and our community safety team do utilise that drone. It was purchased approximately 4 years ago and used predominantly for tracking down escaped farm animals or helping with search and rescue in the forest area has been sort of two of the most recent uses of it. So yeah, one drone, 4 years old.
Thank you, Director.
Thank you, Director. Did you have another question, Mr Denholm?
Yes. Another one. How much does the Shire spend approximately on traffic management, the outsourced, in the past financial year?
Mr Denholm, I'm guessing we'll need to take that on notice. I'm looking at the Director of Corporate Services and he's smiling and nodding, so we'll take that one on notice.
All right. My third question, I'll read Miss Berry's fourth question for her. What was the content of the Shire Facebook post that was removed during the caretaker mode of the recent state election, which involved the Liberal candidate for Darling Range and where the Labor candidate was not invited? Thank you.
Thank you for the third question, Mr Denholm, and thank you for asking that on behalf of the other ratepayer. I would ask the Director of Community Engagement to please provide a response. Thank you, Director.
Thank you, Mr President, and thank you, Mr Denham, for the question. The Shire's approach to election commitments was to share the candidates' posts with regards to election commitment announcements. The Shire shared the WA Liberal Party Facebook post regarding the SJ Community Recreation Centre announcement, adding in our own content to the shared post. With regards to this content isn't available at the moment, it is likely the owner of the content, being the WA Liberal Party, deleted it or unlinked it from the Facebook post. Officers assume the WA Labor Party wasn't invited to this announcement as it was an announcement event organised by the WA Liberal Party.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Director. Thank you, Mr Denholm. Any members of the public like to come forward and ask a question? Thank you. I think you asked three last time, but I know it was Ms Dunkley, but I know it was probably in relation to something different. So I'm happy to allow you to ask another three questions if you needed to or wanted to. Did you want to ask a question? I thought you put your hand up.
Yes, please.
Come forward then. Thank you.
Thank you. My first question is...
Sorry.
sorry.
I know you...
Belinda
Thank
Dunkley.
you. Thank you.
I'm not providing my suburb...
But you are a ratepayer.
I am a ratepayer in the Shire.
Yeah.
Yes. Is the Shire and Council aware of responsibilities and requirements surrounding government caretaker mode?
Thank you for the question. I think Mr CEO is leaning forwards for his microphone, so I'll ask the Chief Executive Officer to provide a response.
Thank you, Mr President, and thank you for the question, Ms Dunkley. It's an interesting one, to be honest, because the caretaker provisions typically only apply to the state government, and in fact, during the election process, we tried to receive clarification of whether the state government's caretaker conventions apply to local government, and we couldn't get a definitive answer on that. So yes, we're aware of the caretaker provisions the state government has, and we probably exercised an element of caution in regards to how we managed the process during the election, but there's no definitive statement about whether the state government's caretaker provisions apply to local government that we could find. We're happy to be corrected on that, but we searched and couldn't find any that related to that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr CEO. Do you have another question?
I've got one more, thank you.
Thank you.
Will the Shire continue to show a Liberal Party bias during this current federal election that it has showed during the state election?
I will answer that question as the President of the Shire. I and the Shire did not play favourites to any political party during the 2025 state election. We had one candidate who was a councillor at the time. He was afforded no extra privileges or favouritism. The gentleman from the Liberal Party was not shown any favouritism or bias. Since you raised it, Ms Dunkley, I'm happy to say to the public that not Lisa Harvey, I'm going back a bit in time now, the leader of the opposition, Libby Mettam, through Paul Mansfield, asked me as the Shire President to attend a park within Byford to support them in an announcement for shade sales. My response back to the Liberal Party was no. A, because I wasn't playing favourites, but more importantly, Ms Dunkley, it wasn't one of the approved advocacy projects that Council endorsed. And you'll find during the whole process, I'm really, really proud of what the Shire did with our advocacy for the 2025 state election. There was a process in place. There was the 6 advocacy projects that were adopted by Council. There was a plan in place that any party, whether it was Nationals, Liberals or Labor, came out and made an announcement. I would be advised, and I was only part of that if it was one of those projects as agreed to by Council within the 2025 election advocacy paperwork. Further, I have been accused of members of the public for showing too much bias towards Hugh Jones. I actually find it quite funny that a member of the public would sit here and ask me to, as on behalf of the Shire, why we paid so much favouritism to the Liberal Party. Objectively, if you go through the Shire's Facebook posts, probably because Hugh Jones made more commitments than the Liberal Party, you'll find that there's probably more announcements, more Facebook pages, more shares, more likes by the Shire, more likes for me and my personal Shire of Serpentine Jarrahdale President's page supporting Hugh Jones and the Labor Party. I actually find it quite offensive that anyone would turn around and say that this Shire showed bias to any particular candidate or party during the 2025 state election. The final thing I'll say to that before I turn my attention to the federal election is on the day of the election being 8th of March, so there would be no perceived conflict, I removed myself from the Shire and I went to Dwellingup to go camping because I did not want to be targeted or I did not want to be associated with doing one party over the other. I actually find that quite disrespectful that I or the Shire has been tarnished or been accused of showing favouritism. Now, I'll turn my attention to the federal election. I made a comment before about Andrew Hastie, the federal member for Canning, and he has been for a significant period of time. I would like to say I'm friends with Andrew. That is immaterial because I'm sitting here as the Shire President. I made that comment before about Mr Hastie and the $2.4 million because that was an announcement that was made some 2 or 3 weeks ago. We've got members in the public in the second row that would vouch for that announcement. That announcement also was shared on the Shire's Facebook page as per the process for any advocacy that we do, any commitment by either state, federal, Liberal, Labor, Nationals, One Nation, whatever the party may be. Paul Martin and I have also met with the Labor candidate for the seat of Canning. We spent time with him. He has also met with the Mundijong Netball Association. As soon as that person was endorsed, through the executive assistant to Mr Martin and myself, we reached out and met with that gentleman. He was very, very supportive and I look forward to working with him. The other thing we have now, fortunately in 2025 and on the 3rd of May, is we've now got 2 federal seats. We've got the seat of Burt and the seat of Canning. So let me now talk to the seat of Burt. Seat of Burt is a federal member, being Matt Keogh. Matt Keogh and I are also friends. I'll put that on the record. I'm friends now with Matt Keogh. Simply because Matt Keogh is a minister of something that is very, very close to my heart. Defence, veterans and personnel. I'm very, very proud of the work Minister Keogh has done, and I'm exceptionally proud of the fact that Minister Keogh is now part of, or his federal electorate is part of the Shire of Serpentine Jarrahdale. We have met with Minister Keogh. We met with him twice when we were in Canberra. We've met with him again. He made the effort to come to the citizenship ceremony on the 26th of January, being Australia Day, and he also made the effort to come to the citizenship ceremony a couple of weeks ago on the 19th of March. The relationship the Shire has with Minister Keogh extends beyond my personal relationship and is a relationship that is very, very productive. One thing we're talking to Minister Keogh about is the rec centre in Byford, because that is now in the seat of Burt. So I'll put on record now at the annual electors meeting that Rob Coles and the Shire of Serpentine Jarrahdale treats all candidates respectfully. We treat them all the same, and at the end of the day, it's not about personal opinions of councillors or presidents, it's about the people of the Shire of Serpentine Jarrahdale. Thank you for your question. Do you have another one?
Actually, one that's come up whilst
Yes.
you've been speaking. Did you attend the Labor Party launch for the state election? Because
No.
you attended the Liberal Party.
Yes.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Thank you, Mr Tomlinson. Please come forward and state your name and your suburb of residence if you're able to.
My name's Gary Tomlinson. I live in Jarrahdale. First question, was tonight's meeting actually advertised on the web page?
Thank you for your question, Mr Tomlinson. It was reflected on the Shire's webpage. I might go to the Director of Community Engagement to talk more specifically about that. Sorry. Director, are you happy to provide a response?
Thank you, Mr President, and thank you, Ms Tomlinson, for the question. It's my understanding that the annual meeting of electors was advertised as required, including the website, public notice, and shared via the Shire's weekly e-newsletter, SJ Matters.
Thank you, Director. Do you have another question, Mr Tomlinson?
Just with the current disarray in the WAC Commission on the state election and the previous failure with the last Shire election in regards to stolen postal votes, I just want to know which councillors in their right mind would vote for a total postal vote for the next council election. I think it's a joke.
Thank you for your second question, Mr Tomlinson. I don't know if any of the directors want to answer it, but I'm happy to say that it was a resolution of council that the next local government election in October 2025 will be conducted by postal votes. Members of the public are quite happy, or quite are allowed, I should say, to move a motion tonight to change that, but it is a resolution of council.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions from the floor? Thank you. Please come forward, Mr Reynolds, and state your full name, or state your name, I should say, not your full name. State your name and your suburb of residence, please.
Vanessa Reynolds, Oakford. As per the March OCM, President Coles put forward a motion for the Shire to cover the additional costs of Kiernan Park Stage 1, being $15 million from memory. My apologies if I don't have the wording correct. I wasn't prepared for tonight's meeting because I didn't know about it until a couple of days ago. So I'm wondering where this money will come from, please.
Thank you for the question, Ms Reynolds. Yes, I did move that motion, and I will now ask the Director of Corporate Services to provide a response if he's happy to. Thank you, Director.
If I can just speak in broad terms, grants and developer contribution funding are the main bulk of the $36 million project. The Shire is contributing a small amount.
Can I ask how much the Shire is contributing then?
Can I take that on notice? I'll give you the exact number rather than guess the exact number now.
Okay. I will state there that I find that difficult, that information isn't actually known. So my second question is, in relation to the above, Councillor Mack didn't actually support that motion and stated that he didn't feel that we had that funding available. Therefore, I'm wondering if all of our councillors have access to exactly the same information.
Yes, they do, and I'm not going to speak on behalf of Councillor Mack. Unfortunately, he's not here.
Yep.
But Ms Reynolds, let me say something unequivocal. It's a wonderful thing about democracy. It'd be awful to be on a council that agrees with everything. Isn't it wonderful that we can now have respectful debate and we can disagree on things? Do you have another question, Mrs Reynolds?
No, I absolutely agree with that comment.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public who'd like to come forward and ask a question? Lady in the back row.
Janelle Kennedy, Darling Downs. I just wanted to know, I've only just got the one question. What plans are in place, or does the Shire have in place to look at increasing the number of Shire reserves, given the large number of areas, mainly due to development and roads and things that will be lost, you know, including mature vegetation and things like that?
Thank you. And did you give your suburb of residence?
Darling Downs.
Darling Downs.
Yep.
Thank you. Director, Development Services, are you able to provide a response, please?
Certainly. Thank you, through you, Mr President, and thank you for the question. Road projects do unfortunately have an impact on roadside vegetation, which we're seeing, I guess, currently along Cargodditch Road and Orton Road. The Shire's urban and rural forestry strategy does identify that risk for the Shire, given my colleague earlier did talk about the number of Category 4 and 5 roads, which principally have a lot of trees in the area we'd usually consider as a clearway where there shouldn't be trees. And we've all driven along the likes of sort of Cargodditch Road and Mundajong Road and Abernathy Road where, you typically don't put trees so close to the road pavement. So our urban and rural forestry strategy does take a really strong focus on planting more trees as quickly as we can to recognise that we will unfortunately see some loss over the immediate sort of 3 to 5 year period as these road projects roll out. In terms of acquiring land to essentially offset the loss of urban tree canopy, we haven't specifically identified that as a short, medium or long-term pursuit. I guess acquiring privately owned land which is fully vegetated, I guess we would also consider that there are controls in place that really try to protect properties which are forested from being able to be cleared. So the government policy at both state and local levels has evolved to try to limit the amount of tree clearing. At our current process, our current approach is to be sort of physically planting more trees, particularly in areas which are quite low in the urban and rural tree canopies. So around Byford is a particular focus. And of course, as areas of Mundajong now open up for new development, not in the town centre, but on the edge, there's a strong focus on placing public open spaces where they coincide with like shelter belts or tree outcrops on these former farming properties, as well as planting trees or making developers plant trees in their new streets that they're creating.
Thank you.
Perhaps if I can add to that.
Yeah, Mr CEO, do you want to add to that?
I think it's a great answer from the Director. I just would add that one of the things we are doing this year is getting better at how we manage and plan for our offsets. So when we do any projects, like when we cleared the 5 trees to do the skate park extension and we're clearing trees for the roads, as the Director said, we've actually put a person on board to start looking at how we plan for improving the reserves that we have by better coordinating the offset planting there. So the government would say you can clear those trees for that project, but you need to plant a number of offsets. We haven't really managed that as well as we could have in the past, and now we've got a person on board to try and get a bit of an offset plan for us going forward so that we can actually improve, as the Director was sort of saying, those reserves and make them better environmentally, I guess.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you, Director. Thank you, Mr CEO. Do you have another question, Ms Kennedy?
Just on that, maybe just to say, maybe that's a consideration, or could the Shire consider obviously looking at down the planning in terms of acquiring or having more Shire reserves, given the fact that there's going to be such a massive increase in loss. I know that costs money, but just thought I'd ask the question.
Mr President, certainly something we can take on board. To be honest, we're trying to get to the point of even managing the reserves we have currently well, but certainly we can take that on board as we go forward about how those offsets are managed, and maybe there's capacity to buy some land in some of those projects. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Kennedy. I think there was... Yes, please come forward. Miss Baker, is it? Or please just state your name and your suburb, please.
Karina Baker, Cardup. Okay, on the 14th of February, I rang the Shire officers and spoke to someone in planning. Unfortunately, I've lost my notes of his name, about the Wormhole signage on their actual operations building. I did ask the question, have they received retrospective approval to be able to have that amount of signage? Because that is signage, and it is the exact same fencing signage that was up when they first went there, and they were told to pull it down because it is actual signage. So I've heard nothing back. They said they would ring me, and considering we've got 99% of complaints are resolved within 14 days, I haven't even got a phone call back, and it's really important because it looks ugly.
Absolutely, thank you for the question.
And we're Cardup, so...
Yeah, thank you for the question.
Yep.
Director of Development Services, you able to provide a response, please?
Yeah, thank you for your question. Certainly, the shade cloth is a requirement of the approval to help screen the activities, but I do acknowledge the previous green shade cloth has now evolved into, I guess, the corporate brand. So what I might do is, if I could get back to you once I've had a bit of a look internally to see where the complaint is at, see when officers have approached the operator, whether the operator is applying to be able to retain that type of shade cloth, because it still is a shade cloth, but it is branded in their
It's
colours.
the whole thing.
Yeah.
But basically it's because, Cut-Up's going through some really terrible things at the moment, and to see that as our entrance point, and I don't know how people miss it. Even councillors, I must drive by it thinking, why have we got Wormel, all the way down there? It just shouldn't be in its signage, and I don't think it's part of our policy to have a whole block of signage. Can't they put it at the development? It's where they are.
I'll definitely get back in touch if that's okay.
Excellent.
I'll look tomorrow, see where it's at, and then I'll give you a phone call.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you, Ms Baker. Thank you, Director. Are there any other questions from the floor? Ms Reynolds, you already have asked questions. Mrs Bond, and then you can come forward, Mrs Reynolds, after Mrs Bond.
You've already said my name, and I live in a box in Armidale.
Well, I hope you're a ratepayer, Mrs Bond.
Pardon?
I hope you're paying rates to us, not to Armidale.
What?
So I hope you're paying rates to the Shire of Serpentine, Jarrahdale, not Armidale.
Gee, I'll have to check that one. What is the reason for islands being constructed down Nicholson Road and Peters Way, Oakford? What is the cost for this work, and who ordered the work to be done? Was the stock feed business in Peters Way consulted before proceeding with this?
Thank you for your question, Mrs Bond. I'm guessing we'll need to take that on notice, but I will just look towards the Director of Infrastructure Services. He's nodding, so we'll take that on notice. Thank you, Mrs Bond.
Why was the electors' meeting not advertised by the Shire? Who makes the decision about what you will and will not make public regarding important matters within the Shire? Do you consider the electors' meeting of menial or no value?
Thank you for your second question, Mrs Bond. I'll ask the Director of Community Engagement to please provide a response.
Thank you, Mr President, and thank you, Mrs Bond, for the question. Since the last question regarding the advertisement of the annual meeting of electors, I can confirm that it was published on the Shire's Facebook page and has also been published on the Shire's website and has been promoted in the lead up to tonight's meeting via the Shire's weekly e-newsletter.
Have you got a date for that?
Sorry, Director, are you happy to respond? I'll take that on notice.
Yes, it was published on the Shire's website on the 6th of March, and it was promoted on the Shire's website in January. On the Shire's Facebook page in January.
Well, just so you know, some poor lady was here at 5:30 waiting to get in through the door because that's what was advertised. So it should have been advertised again, surely.
Did you have another question, Mrs Bond?
The creditors' payments leave little or no explanation of monies handed out for all sorts of groups, activities, individuals, workshops, etc. Who makes the decisions on the spending of ratepayers' money for items which are not related to Shire rates, Shire rubbish and Shire roads?
Thank you, Mrs Bond. I'm looking at the Director of Development Services. Would you like to take that question on notice, Director, or Mr CEO?
I'm happy to.
Thank you, Director.
The Shire organisation has extensive delegation list that for authorising of payments. So I would say that all payments are made in accordance with appropriate regulation.
Thank you, Director. Do you want to add anything, Mr CEO? No. Thank you, Mrs Bond. That's your 3 questions. Mrs Reynolds, do you want to come forward and ask your question?
After one of the other ratepayers just asked a question in relation to vegetation and trees, this has just triggered another thought in my mind. I remember probably 5 or 6 months ago, Councillor Mazzini mentioned that trees when they're planted, cost around about $1,000 per annum in care and watering, etc. If we're removing old growth trees and replanting them with new ones that are going to take 50 or 60 years before they're actually appropriate for our fauna to nest in, etc., where do the funds come from in the meantime at $1,000 a year to maintain them and make sure they live? I've seen so many of them die, even though they are being watered and appear to be looked after.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Mrs Reynolds. I'm looking around the room. Mr CEO, should we take that on notice?
I think I might provide a bit of a response, and I might ask the Executive Manager of Operations to talk about the improvements we're making to how we're managing some of the public open space areas. And so you're right, the trees do take some time to grow, and there'll be a report coming to this month's council meeting about the arrangement that we've been able to secure with the Public Transport Authority, which is a good example about the work that Andrew and Fareed have done. To the Public Transport Authority are offering to pay the Shire an amount of money to improve the vegetation in Brickwood Reserve, $2.1 million, I think the amount is, for a period of time for some 20 years, thank you. And we've developed a program for that work about what the planting include. It includes maintenance, it includes rubbish collection and a whole range of things. So that's the sort of comment I was trying to make before. We're trying to get better at how we are doing the offsets and then maintaining those. I wouldn't say that we're entirely there yet, but we're certainly trying to get better at that. I don't know whether Andrew or Fareed want to just comment on any of those other elements of that.
Thank you, Mr CEO. Director, Development Services, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Certainly trees in our Shire, particularly I'm more familiar in the urban front, where we're filling the land with about 2 metres of yellow sand. So whereas trees do enjoy sort of where they're planted in farmland, they are close to the water table. When we elevate to essentially be able to urbanise Byford, we essentially create quite a free draining median. So we do find that there's at least the need for 2 summers of watering. And then once we're past that, the tree is usually capable to survive. So it's not a cost that is incurred infinitum, but certainly establishment costs for our sort of approaches that we have to do in dealing with development on sort of a floodplain does require, yes, that intense watering for at least sort of 2 summer periods.
Thank you for the response, Director. Did you have another question?
May I make a comment?
Sure.
My property is in Oakford. We are low-lying ground. We're underwater in winter, so we can't use most of our block. We've put over $10,000 worth of trees in, and they drown every year because we're 1 foot above clay. So I'm not so sure that maybe that comment is relevant in the whole of the area, but I do like the idea that we're actually looking at that in future. However, it is probably a little bit too late. We're already taking everything out before we can replace it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Reynolds. Ladies and gentlemen, is there any other questions from the floor? Yes, sir, please come forward.
Shannon Summers, Carter. Just regarding drainage in the area. Just wondering if there's any upgrades planned for water drainage for the areas affected, particularly Carter, from the existing housing developments in Byford built over the last 10 years or so.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Mr Summers. I would look towards the Director of Development Services if you're able to provide a response, or the Director of Infrastructure Services. If not, I'll take that question on notice, Mr Summers. Do you have another question?
Just probably more specifically, what's in place for the drainage upgrades for areas that will be affected by the new subdivision on the corner of Cardup Siding Road and Hopkinson Road.
Yeah, thank you for your second question. Director of Development Services, can you provide a response? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for your question. Maybe just circling back to the first question, I guess the development of Byford, we're principally seeing the water, I guess, shed off the scarp and move westward. So we're essentially creating sort of 4 or 5 quite significant multi-use corridors, which are more or less aligned with the brooks and the Oakland main drains and Cardup Brook. So flooding in Cardup directly associated with the urbanisation of Byford. We would like to know a little bit more about that specifically. But in terms of your second question, so that estate, that's about 110 hectares of a new master plan community, some 1,300 allotments. So certainly taking that pasture land and converting it into roads and houses and public open space is going to create a lot more impervious area. They do have a local water management strategy which essentially requires that they hold and infiltrate at source the water that ultimately is generated through runoff and storm events. So to do that, you probably have seen the large amounts of yellow sand that they're now carting into the estate. That's to give that sort of free draining opportunity so that they can use sort of soak wells, rain gardens, swales and sort of detention areas to be able to ensure that water is not flooding certainly Cardup to the south or putting further risk on developed areas of Byford on the north side of Cardup Siding Road. So that's sort of the approach typically to the urbanisation and to the management of drainage and flood risk.
Thank you, Director. Does that answer your question, Mr Summers? Did you have a third one?
Partly, yes. That's all.
Thank you, Mr Summers. Thank you for your questions. Ms Baker, I think you asked 2, so you can have another. Is there anyone else that would like to ask a question? Someone that hasn't had the opportunity yet? Bearing in mind, ladies and gentlemen, there is, next on the agenda is statements, so people can make statements. Thank you, Ms Baker. Please come forward.
Me again. Just further on that drainage thing for Cardup, because of the big development there, with the reserve next to that development, is there some specific plan or strategy to not kill that reserve, the Cardup Reserve, because the height that that's going to be in comparison to the actual vegetation of that reserve, I think it's going to do a lot of damage to it. And what sort of mitigation have they got to make sure that it's not going to impact that beautiful reserve in there?
Thank you, Ms Baker. I'd ask the Director of Development Services to please provide a response.
Thank you, Mr President. Thank you for the question. Certainly the risk of directing stormwater into a natural system that is not used to water flows would absolutely create risk for that system. So that is definitely strictly prohibited. Absolutely one of the key things is about ensuring that the Cardup Nature Reserve is not impacted by that development. So principally at their western, sort of at their east and west common boundary, there will be sort of a road, I guess a road sort of edge along the whole reserve, which will provide sort of opportunities to, I guess, set a natural barrier to make sure flooding or water is heading to the west and not heading, not a cross section back to the east. So that's principally there, but that, I guess what you're talking about is particularly that interface and how that interface is managed.
Yeah, fantastic.
So yes, it's definitely an important issue that, the DBCA are also raising with the developer.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you, Director. Thank you, Ms Baker, for your questions. Was there anyone else like to come forward and ask a question? Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. That brings us on to agenda item 3.3. Agenda item 3.3 is public statements, of which prior notice has been given. I have received nil. I'll confirm with the staff that we have received nil.
None received, Mr President.
That being the case, agenda item 3.4 is public statements received from the floor. Is there anyone who'd like to come forward and make a statement. Thank you, Mrs McEwen. And again, 3 minutes, please. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. President, councillors. I've spoken about one of these issues before, but I'd like to reiterate it to you going forward in the new, in your new year, and also I'll make a new comment as well. My first comment is about water. It is a limited, valuable resource. It is the most precious resource. Despite the environmental laws in place, our water is not being protected. Please take our future seriously, investigate our concerns and protect this resource. Do not allow our water to be polluted and our environment to be abused. My second point is about illegal dumping. This is increasing. You can see mattresses, tyres, bikes, toys strewn along our roads. In fact, a couple of months ago, along Norman Road, just into the bush, an entire trailer load of rubbish, an entire big trailer full of rubbish was dumped and left there. If you take a walk in the bush, anywhere seems to be fair game for dumping. I am not sure what you can do about it, but please do something before our Shire is just one big dumping ground. Thank you.
Thank you. And just for the record, I did call you Mrs McEwen, that's correct, and you live in Cardup?
Yeah.
Thank you. There's another member of the public like to come forward and make a statement. Mrs Bond? And I think Mr Tomlinson and then Ms Baker, did you want to? Yeah.
Don't touch it. Keeps my heart going. You think I'm joking, don't you, Press? With regard to the islands on Nicholson Road and Peters Way, Oakford, did anyone consider the safety issues with this mess? Who in their right mind would want injuries or a death on their hands, because no engineer should take credit for this dangerous situation? The Stockfeed business has been there for many years, and as anyone should know, they have a large number of truck movements delivering all sorts of produce. Thanks to the stupid island in Peters Way, a truck almost came to grief. What is really required is the road to be resurfaced and get rid of the roller coaster dips in the road instead of putting concrete curbing along the sides of the road and creating another hazard for the trucks. The island obviously was not done to measurements. This is a narrow road and doesn't need to have ratepayers' money wasted on a non-required obstacle course. No one sought the opinion of the Stockfeed owner, and he is a ratepayer. It appears to be a trend with islands in the Shire. Why were islands put each side of the roundabout on Carnup Road and Richardson Street Serpentine? Almost 400,000 for nothing and for no reason. That money could have been better spent on sensible needs within the Shire, and the sensible needs should have had funding sought if the Shire coffers were low. What is the point of having a local government if decisions to spend money are being made by people with agendas, not knowledge or concern for the ratepayers of this Shire? Transparency means just that, not the rubbish that is going on within this council at this time and has been a feature of this council for many years. Councillors and council staff are to respect the position they have. They are not to run off at the mouth to their mates providing inside information, and there is no secret, there is a lot of that going on.
Thank you, Mrs Bond. Mr Tomlinson, do you want to come forward and make your statement?
Gary Tomlinson, Jarrahdale. Just on the election stuff again, I work in Byford now, part-time, and a lot of people I speak to have complained about corruption within our Shire, and I think with what happened with the last election, with the postal voting, the Shire didn't stand up and try and fight to be sorted with the WAEC, and I really think now it's time that you actually stand up and look into it properly, because I think it's going to happen again. And with all the corruption that was happening last time with the previous Shire president not paying the rates and stuff, I really think you need to stand up and get the corruption out of this Shire. Thank you.
Mr Tomlinson, I will make a comment that if you do have some concerns about corruption, then please report that. You can do so to the Corruption and Crime Commission.
Okay, thank you.
Ms Baker, do you want to come forward and make your statement, please? Is there anyone else after Ms Baker? Two more, okay.
Corina Baker, Cardup. Over the last, since January actually, if anyone's noticed, or I've made phone calls to DWER as well as the Shire and spoke to the environmental guy, I think his name is Berlin. He was very helpful. Cardup has been going through a significant water problem. We rely solely and totally on bore water, groundwater for our domestic purposes. We don't have access to any scheme water, and water tanks are hard to get approvals for. Now, speaking to DWER and why we are having, and it was across Cardup, my next door neighbour had to put a new bore in, it's still not working. The aquifers that we are having a lot of problems with the aquifers there. And being domestic use, we're not that deep because you don't need to hit an artesian bay to service a house and to put water into your tanks. And ringing DWER, they have given licences for 2 bores at the corner of Soldiers and Cardup Siding Road. One for 70,000 kilolitres, that's over a 12-month period, and one for 94,000 kilolitres. Each kilolitre is 1,000 litres. That is such a huge amount of water that they are sucking, and in a very short time through the summer months. Now, we had rain in January. Last year, 9 months with no rain, not very good. But because we're all very water-wise in these areas because of this, we know how to use our water. Everyone in Cardup is very good with their water use. 9 months without rain last year, recovery for our aquifers, it was problematic. This year we had rain in December. We haven't had the heat. Our recoveries should be better, but it's not happening. They are pumping, apparently metered, but they are pumping so much water out of there, and it's in a quick succession through the summer months. And there are so many people, and I mean a lot of people, and it's been on Facebook, and there was just people coming on. Is anyone having a problem with their water in Cardup? We're having the same. Our bore actually dried. Ours did, done.
Ms Baker, sorry to interrupt, that's 2 minutes 30, you've got 30 seconds left.
Oh, and it actually blew our pump. It has cost us thousands of dollars just to get the basic thing, which is water, which we're entitled to. And I think that the Shire should be responsible for areas that rely on this much-needed thing to help us out here, because no one has. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Baker. Ms Reynolds, did you want to come forward and make your statement? And Ms Kennedy, do you want to come after? Thank you.
Thank you. I do have 2 statements, so if you want me to do them separately, I'm happy to do that.
Can you do them both in 3 minutes?
I'll try.
Okay.
I sat before you in the February OCM and requested that Council not make a decision on the waste transfer station due to lack of accurate information and reflection of community needs. I believe that I provided very good evidence of why this was the case. Council still continued to proceed with the agenda item, of which an alternate motion was put forward. The community had not had a chance to review or comment on this option. I will now provide the Council and the gallery with a little bit of accurate information before I propose my motion tonight.
Sorry, Ms Reynolds, I know the rules are you used 36 seconds already, you've only got 3 minutes. You can, if you move a motion later on, you can speak to that motion when you put it up. So
Okay.
maybe you might be better off, not telling you
Holding
what
it
to
to
do,
that.
but it might be better to save time to put what you're about to say now as part of your motion.
Sure, thank you.
Okay, but you've only got 30 seconds, so you've got
Yeah,
another...
that makes sense.
Do you want to
And
speak to something else?
the second one is
Thank you.
similar. Early last year, I provided council with some photographs and some information regarding some very serious traffic issues, illegal moves and dangerous choices being made daily outside of Court Grammar School. That issue is ramping up now that the school is expanding. They're also moving teachers' car parking because they're putting in a swimming pool. Student numbers have actually increased by 50% in the last 4 years, and they're still continuing to increase, yet no infrastructure is actually being put in place. I have copies of the photographs here tonight if anybody would like to see them prior to me putting in the motion, so that you can actually see exactly what I'm putting forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs Reynolds. Ms Kennedy, you'd like to come forward and make your statement. Thank you.
Danelle Kennedy, Darling Downs. I would just like to thank the Shire of Serpentine Jarrahdale and councillors for opposing the proposed extension of the development approval and extraction timeframe for the industry extractive Lot 6, Bankshire Road, and Lots 30301, Boomerang Road, Albury. To assist the council, I'd maybe recommend that experts in their field, such as... Okay. That's all right. Experts in their fields such as botanists and ecologists, for example, Kate Towse, Professor Kingsley Dixon, Bronwyn Carey, to provide professional opinion or advice on the Bankshire woodland and the success of rehabilitation that the sand miners claim. Done.
Thank you, Ms
Thank
Kennedy.
you.
Thank you very much. I'll call again. Is there anyone else who'd like to come forward and make a statement? The gentleman, I think it's Mr Summers, and then Mr Denham.
Yeah, it's Shannon Summers, by the way. You put down Shane before. Yeah, just regarding the water and just some findings that I've found myself. I've lived here 14 years in Carter. I've seen the frequency of flooding in my street increase unusually. No flooding experience until 4 years ago. And my property's flooded 3 times in the last 4 years due to the Carter Brook breaking its banks. I believe it's just due to the size of Byford and the increase in population. My estimation is the Carter Brooks had to cope with an increase of around 300% over the 14 years that I've been there. Just calculated by the number of dwellings in Byford. I think that's all. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr Summers, and apologies. So your first name is Shannon, S-H-A-N-N-O-N?
Correct.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. Thank you. No, apologies again. Mr Denholm, would you like to come forward and make your statement, please?
Bill Denham, Carricup, 3 minutes, rightio. Good evening, everyone. A week ago, I had enough. Nothing has improved in the Shire. The 3 main tasks of a Shire, roads, rubbish and rates, overall are not a good result in SJ. Roads are backwards, rubbish, no transfer station and rates up. I'll sit here and say I was going to move a motion tonight on a vote of no confidence in the CEO. I'm that gutted. In my opinion, he has lost control of his team, and I'm often told by the Director of Community, we at SJ are a
Mr
team.
Denham, I'll just stop you there.
Yeah, go on.
Whilst I'm happy for members to make statements and it's your right as a ratepayer, just be careful about attacking an
No, I'm not attacking. No, that's all there is.
and I'll stop the watch, so you've got 30 seconds that you've spent.
To go?
You've done 30 seconds already.
Yeah,
so,
right now.
Okay.
In my opinion, no, he's the man in charge of this team. This decision, and this is where it's positive, this decision, however, changed in the last week. He has always returned my calls and listened, although not always agreeing with me. I say last week because the Netball Association was, in my opinion, misled and not consulted with regarding the works over at the Monday netball courts by some of the Shire officers. When this was raised to the CEO, Mr Martin, he immediately arranged a meeting with netball on site 2 days after the problems were raised. 2 senior officers also attended. After an open discussion by all, a remedy for most problems was found. It's amazing what a bit of consultation and a bit of common sense can achieve. This took an hour. This is what good leaders of teams do, lead by example. The problem was solved. But make no mistake, this Shire is in a bad state of affairs. Roads have deteriorated drastically. The rubbish disposal, we used to have a transfer station, that was working well, now we don't have one at all. And a lot of illegal dumping, as we've heard. It's a great cost to the Shire. No major facilities have been built, and we appear to be outsourcing a lot of the work, i.e. a soil screener for screening green waste and road drainage material. I also thought we had purchased a forestry mulcher for grinding shrubs on road verges. Both were supposed to be purchased while I was a councillor in a previous life. And finally, events such as Australia Day and Harmony Day are not being supported by the ratepayers in attendance. Perception is generally the reality I often hear. The perception is it's a waste of ratepayers' money. The rates could be used in a more appropriate area. Finally, to end on a positive note, the actual netball courts themselves are fantastic. Now we have 33 teams of junior players that can start training on safe courts, thanks to the ratepayers. In my opinion, money well spent in under 3 minutes. Well done.
There's only 2 minutes, Mr Denholm. Thank you very much. Ms Baker, is anyone else like to make a statement? Thank you, Ms Baker. You have already, looking at my notes here, you have already made a statement about water in Cardup. Is there anyone else who'd like to make a statement before I give some latitude to Ms Baker? Mr McEwen?
It's not about water.
No, if you just want to take a seat, please, Ms Baker. I'll get Mr McEwen to come and make a statement, and then if there's no one else, we'll let you come forward. I'm trying to be as fair as possible. Thank you, Mr Wigg.
Good evening, everyone. My name's John McEwen from Cardup. I'd just like to comment about the chap at the back there with the black shirt. It's got nothing to do with the water problem, has got nothing to do with the housing scheme. The water problem has all been caused by the 2 facilities, that is the permacast, permapole, and the top laydown area. They can't control their water, and you people know about this and have done nothing about it. We've had flooding since last year, and this is why we're having flooding, and still nothing has been done. And yet I've had complaints to DERWA and to you people, and still we're waiting now for the flooding to come again this year. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr McEwen. Ms Baker, do you want to come forward? Does anyone else like to make a statement? Ms Baker has already given a statement, so... Okay. Thank you, Ms Baker.
Yeah, it's not about water. This is it's a very sombre one. I attended Barry Urban's memorial the other day, and the most disappointing thing, apart from it was a beautiful service and all the people that were there and the wonderful stories about Barry Urban, but the most disappointing thing I found is that no one from this Shire attended. There's something on the website dedicated to Barry's passing, but considering what his passing was and how violent and horrible it was, that someone from this Shire should have represented his wife and his son live in this Shire, and he's a 15-year-old young man, and no one bothered to go. And I find it I find it deplorable. Thank you.
Thank you for your statement, Ms Baker. That brings us on to agenda item 3.6. 3.6 is motions received. Sorry, 3.5. I should have 3.5 first. Thank you, Mr CEO. So 3.5 of motions of which prior notice has been given. There is one that I've received. So I would ask Ms P.S. Steele from Jarrahdale to come forward, please, and move your motion. All you need to do, Ms Steele, is read the motion out, and then I'll call for someone to second your motion if you're happy to move it.
Yeah, Pia Steele from Jarrahdale. My motion is that the Shire of Serpentine Jarrahdale writes to the relevant state and federal health authority to suspend the mRNA vaccines until they are proven to be 100% safe to ensure the safety and well-being of our community.
Thank you, Ms Steele. Are you happy as it is written up on the screen? There's one to your slight right or one to your full right, if you want to...
Yeah, I just noticed that I had just the one, but it's actually two, like Pfizer and Moderna both have the mRNA.
Did you want to change that now?
Yeah, can we change that to, so
if you
mRNA vaccines?
Sorry, Ms Steele, I'll try not to talk over you.
Sorry.
If you just want to read out what you'd like, then we'll get the Madam Secretary to add that to the motion.
Yeah, so it's the suspend the mRNA vaccines until they are proven to be 100% safe.
Do we need the apostrophe after community? I don't know if that was... Are you happy with that, Ms Steele?
Yeah.
Are you happy to move that motion?
Yes.
Thank you. So it's moved by Pia Steele. Is there someone who's happy to second that motion? Thank you, Mrs Rich. Is there anyone opposed to that motion? Mr Denham, you're opposed? Ms Steele, would you like to open debate? Now, all you need to do is just tell us why this means so much to you and why you would like this passed. So don't panic. It doesn't have to be War and Peace. You can just explain what you think needs to be done.
Yeah. I mean, the first thing that people need to know is that this mRNA technology is brand new. It was never used on humans before. And like Greg Hunt said, you know, the world is taking part in the biggest trial ever seen. And that's exactly what's been happening since the injections have been given to people. There's I can't see without my glasses. There's a gentleman in Canada who did a study on the vials, and he found that there were DNA contaminations like over the recommended allowed amount of DNA contamination. And it was actually Port Hedland Council who brought this to the attention of the rest of Australia. And they have, Port Hedland had written to all the councillors in Australia, as well as the Prime Minister, all the ministers, government and state, asking for the suspension. Because, I mean, this needs to be looked into. There's been too many injuries, too many deaths. I mean, I just had a look at the... I don't know if people know, but we have a adverse event register here in Australia, the DAEN, where you can report adverse events. And as of about a week ago, there's been over 80,000 reports for the Pfizer, over 80,000 adverse events, and of those, 482 have resulted in death. Now, this isn't to say that the vaccine caused the death, but it's something that needs to be looked into. I mean, there have been deaths that have been attributed to the vaccine, like through autopsies. But yeah, this needs to be looked at before more people are injured and, you know, pass away.
Thank you, Ms Steele. You did that exceptionally well. Mrs Rich, would you like to speak or reserve? I'm happy to reserve, thank you. Thank you, Mrs Rich. Mr Denholm, would you like to speak against? Yes, please. You need to come forward, though, and speak at the microphone. Unless we can use the portable microphones, will that work? Does Mr Denholm have to be on camera, or...? Yeah, I'm right, mate. Yeah, okay.
Thanks, Mr Steele. The reason I put my hand up to speak against is not all... my sister's a surgeon, etc., so not all vaccines, well, I don't know of a vaccine that's 100% safe, and I don't know whether the Shire of Serpentine Jarrahdale should be getting involved in, say, medical issues. I'd be leaving it to the doctors and practitioners and stuff. The other thing is, from what I understand, some of these adverse events, and there was some adverse events, are also due to age, other illnesses, etc. So I don't disagree with what Mrs Steele said, but I just don't think the Shire of SJ should be getting involved. And the motion also says 100% safe. I don't think anything can be 100% safe, so that's why I spoke against. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Denholm. Is there anyone who'd like to speak for the motion? Ms Steele, would you like to come forward back to the table and close? So you don't have to, you just come forward and say that you're happy to put it to the vote, or you can sum up. You can have, it's almost like a debate, you can discredit, not as in personally, but discredit what Mr Denholm said, not personally, of course, or you can just put it to the vote. Would you like to close, or? Sorry, Ms Reynolds, did you have a...
possibly say something for the motion?
Yes, you can, please.
I believe that a vaccine should be an individual's choice. We should be able to make our own decisions, whether we do our own research, our own education. I support Ms Steele's motion for the fact that I will never again be told to have a vaccine, otherwise I cannot go to work, I cannot attend my child's school. I'd rather stay home. I had the vaccine and I have adverse reactions. It's taken me 18 months and I'm close on $90,000 to actually rectify the damages caused. They're going to be with me for life. I can rectify the visual things, I can't rectify the rest. It means that I have to be careful wherever I go, whatever I do, whatever surfaces I touch. Nobody can prove that it was the vaccine, but it happened within weeks after having the vaccine. So I'm a living case. If you want to talk to me more, I'm here, I'll share it.
Thank you, Ms Reynolds, for your comments. Is there anyone who'd like to speak against the motion? Ms Steele, would you like to close the debate, or are you happy for me to put it to the vote?
Sure. Yeah, I'm not, I mean, why isn't it a council matter? I mean, you're dealing with health things otherwise, so why not this one? And I mean, there's, like, the USA rolled out the vaccines first. In the first 3 months, they had over 1,000 deaths reported from people who took the vaccine. And these aren't older people. These are just everyday, ordinary Americans who thought that, you know, we'll do the right thing and we'll take the vaccine because that's, you know, what you do. We were told that, you know, if you get the injection, it'll just stay in your arm. Well, not the mRNA ones. They travel all over your body. They cross the blood. The vaccines are designed to make your body into a spike protein manufacturing thing, and these spike proteins go everywhere, and they can even cross the blood-brain barrier. So it's not just a simple, oh, it's in your arm and that's where it'll stay. No, it'll go everywhere. And like I said, this needs to be looked at. This needs to be researched, and they've got the information. In the US, they designed an app called VSafe. Anyone who wanted to could upload the app, and then they got prompted every day, oh, look, you know, let us know how you're going. And they had over 10 million people take up this app and report things. And they've got a lot of data. Why not go through it and let us know what the results were? I mean, I've heard where people had actually passed away and their mobile phone was still saying, hey, how are you going? And someone else was responding saying, they passed away. why are you still sending this message? And they kept sending, so nobody was actually paying attention to what people were inputting into this app. But yeah.
Thank you, Ms Steele. All of those in favour of the motion, please raise your green card. If I can just get when everyone's happy that you've counted. Happy? Can you just put it nice and high, please, gallery, just so the staff can count? And those against, please raise your white card. So the motion is carried 8-4. Thank you. Thank you, Ms Steele.
Thank you.
That brings us on to agenda item 3.6, which is motions received from the floor. I'm happy just the first person put their hand up and we'll just go through it systematically. So, yes, sir, please come forward.
Good evening, Justin Warren from Oakford. Mr President, before I move my motion, I'd like to briefly speak to the motion if you permit.
It might be easier if you put the motion for then speak to it as opposed to speak and then motion. Normally that would be the course of action, but does that make sense?
Yep, sure, no problems. I'll state the motion and then I'll speak to it. My motion is that the general meeting of electors expresses, for the noting by council, its deep dissatisfaction with the Shire of Serpentine Jarrahdale's ongoing mismanagement of the Oakford Fire Station project.
Can you just pause there? You're typing this very quickly. Is this?
Sorry.
Is this being recorded?
I do have it written if you'd like.
Okay, sorry. I think I'll go back. I think as you're talking, it's come up on the screen. So thank you, Madam Secretary. I'll stop talking.
This includes the failure to provide proper project oversight, the alteration of approved designs without consultation, prolonged delays with contract execution, and the continued failure to deliver critical emergency infrastructure for the Oakford Volunteer Bushfire Brigade and the community it serves. That's my motion. I'm here tonight on behalf of over 300...
Sorry, sir, can you just pause? Thank you, Madam Secretary, that worked exceptionally well. Before you progress, can you just have a look at the screen to make sure that's the wording that you're happy with? That was voice to, whatever they call it, voice to text. So hopefully it worked. I was quite impressed.
Other than the commas omitted, that's correct.
And it might be easier. I know who you mean.
Oh yeah. Oakwood, change that to Oakford on the bottom line.
Thank you, Mr Denham. Good pick up.
Thank you.
What we'll do, sir, if you can just, you're obviously happy to move this motion, so we'll just put your name moved. If you just state your name again, please.
Justin Warren.
W-A-R-R-E-N.
W-A-R-R-E-N.
Beautiful. And then what I'll do then, you're happy to move it, I'll call for a seconder, and then I'll be more than happy for you then to talk to the motion. Is there a member, either a councillor or a member of the public that is happy to second this motion? Thank you, Mrs Bond. So it's moved by Mr Warren, seconded by Lee Bond. Mr Warren, you may now speak to the motion.
Wonderful, thank you. I'm here tonight on behalf of over 300 residents of the Shire who, in the space of a single week in December 2024, overwhelmingly petitioned the Shire to spare no expense in ensuring that the Oakford Fire Station project progressed without further delay. In 2021, after years of inaction, Oakford's volunteer firefighters took to the extraordinary action of appealing directly to the state government for a new fire station, highlighting the unacceptable reality that they were operating from private land. Since then, despite funding commitments and land being made available, this project has been plagued by poor oversight, design mismanagement, escalating costs and continued delays, most of which stem from the failures of the Shire's administration and process. Even after councils approved a contractor in December last year, the contract remains unsigned and costs have now increased by approximately 30%. This isn't just a project delay. This is a failure that places both of our volunteers and community at risk. It is time for the Shire to take accountability for what's happening here with regards to the fire station.
Thank you, Mr Warren. Mrs Bond, would you like to speak or reserve? Sorry, Mrs Bond, I can't hear you. Okay, thank you. Is there anyone who would like to speak against the motion? Motion is carried unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Warren. Are there any members of the public like to come forward and move a motion? Thank you, Mrs Rich. So Mrs Rich, Mrs Baker, or Miss Baker, Mrs Baker, and then Mr Tomlinson.
Thank you. I have a number of motions. Would you like me to go through them all now, or would you like
Mrs Rich, maybe if you do one, and then we'll go to Miss Baker. Mr Tomlinson, then I'll come back to you unless there's anyone else, just in fairness. Thank you.
My first motion is that Council publish detailed information when awarding contracts, including prices bid, and explain how and why the successful bidder was chosen, as the cities of Cockburn, Gosnells and Joondalup currently publish by no later than the 30th of June 2025.
Thank you, Mrs Rich. I think it's meant to be Joondalup. It's interesting how the computer says Joondalup, but we'll get there. If you just wait a moment, please, Mrs Rich, and then once the Madam Secretary fixes up the computer error, if you could just read it and make sure you're happy with it, please. Thank you, Madam Secretary. Mrs Rich, are you happy with that?
From what I can see, it's fine. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mrs Rich. Is there a member of the gallery or a councillor who is happy to second that motion? Thank you, Mrs Reynolds. That is seconded by Mrs Reynolds, Vanessa Reynolds. While that's being typed, is there anyone opposed to the motion? You're opposed, Ms Berry? Okay. Ms Berry is opposed. Mrs Rich, would you like to open debate, please?
Thank you. There is a number of local governments across WA that actually do publish quite a bit more information than what the Shire of Serpentine-Jarrahdale does in this space. There has been numerous articles published by the Association of Civil Contractors, where they have asked for further information to be published across the local government landscape to enable contractors to be able to improve their own processes and understand where they are going wrong or why they are unsuccessful in gaining tenders. My thought process is that with more information that is being able to be published, it will actually give our community a greater insight and knowledge of how these things work as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs Rich. Mrs Reynolds, did you want to speak or reserve? Thank you. I think I had Ms Berry as opposed. Did you want to speak against the motion, Ms Berry?
No, only understanding experiences.
Sorry, it's only being recorded, so I'll have to try and you either come forward to the microphone or I'll have to repeat what you're saying. You don't want to speak against? Okay. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak for the motion? Say again? Yes, do you want to speak against, Mr. Denham?
Bill Denham, Caracup. The problem I've got with this one is I think a lot of the information is confidential. So where do you draw the line on confidential and stuff? So I don't know whether the motion's actually worded properly because contracts and everything, while I agree with the transparency and everything, I think there's a fair bit of information there that might be confidential, and I always thought as a councillor you had all these things rated and everything like that, but I'm not saying transparency couldn't be improved, but I have a problem with where confidential stops. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr Denham. Is anyone else like to speak for the motion? Mrs Rich, would you like to come and close the debate, please?
Thank you. Given that there is a number of local governments across the local government landscape in WA that already publish considerably more information than what Serpentine Jarrahdale Shire publishes, there is room for movement in this space. The commercial in confidence blanket is used very broadly to enable local governments not to publish information, where we are seeing local governments that are actually publishing more information, making things more accountable, transparent for their communities and for the businesses that are tendering for the works, whatever that may be. So I think that in this area, Serpentine Jarrahdale can improve, and that is why I've put this motion forward tonight, and I'm happy to send it to the vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs Rich. I'll get it right this time. Green is for yes, so all those in favour of the motion, please raise your green cards, or thumb up if it's... And all those against, white card, please. Motion is carried 9-3. Thank you, members of the public. The next one I have listed is Ms Baker. Would you like to come forward?
Okay, first I'm going to
Ms
correct
Baker, we'll
you.
just pause for a
sorry.
sec. I just want to make sure the staff are okay. Thank you, Ms Baker. Please, so it's Karina Baker Carter?
Yeah, Mrs.
Sorry. I'll get there eventually. Can you please read out your motion?
Okay. That council requests the CEO to write the Minister for Water, Don Punch, and DWER, and requests that the Shire of Serpentine Jarrahdale is notified in writing of all water bore licences, registrations, etc. Issued below 100,000 kilolitres within the Shire, the Serpentine Jarrahdale district, to enable the Shire officers to support residents when they experience water loss or disruptions due to any form of development or construction.
Just pause for a second, please, Mrs Baker, and we'll just get the writing done properly.
permission to approach Fraser? I've got to go on hungry.
While we're doing that, can I just confirm with the CEO or the Director Community Engagement, Minister Punch is the Minister? That has changed, has it? Because it was Minister McGurk, but it may have changed.
I know it's changed, Mr President. If that's okay, we can always correct it if when the motions come back to the council, if that we get the intent of what the motion is trying to do.
Are you happy with that, Mrs Baker, as written on the screen? If you, I can read it out if that assists.
Yes.
You happy with that? Thank you. Are you happy to move that motion? That Mr Tomlinson, are you happy to second it, or you got a question? Whereabouts?
Wouldn't it be better to say that on boards over 50,000 kilolitres? Otherwise, once it's 100,000, they can buy for 110 and nothing to do with that.
We'll pause on that, Mrs Baker. Are you happy with the wording? It's your motion. Is that what you want?
The reason the 100,000 is because they don't have to advertise. Once it's 100,000 under 100,000 litres, no developer has to actually advertise that there's going to be bores in the area. So I'm trying to, anything over 100,000, they have to advertise.
Yeah, okay,
and
fair enough.
But this is to make sure under that.
Thank you, Mrs Baker. Mr Denham, are you happy to second that, or you got another question?
There's a problem there. Minister for Water, just the Minister for Water, and they will request that the Shire certain one there is not a problem.
Thank you, Mr Denham. Mrs Reynolds, are you happy to second, or you got another typo?
I just wondered whether we should take Don Punch out of it, and then it doesn't matter who the minister
Who the minister is,
Are you happy with that? It's your motion,
Yeah, that's
Mrs Baker?
fine, yeah.
So just writes the minister for water? Yeah, okay. Right, we'll try again. Is there... So before I ask for a seconder, are you happy with that, Mrs Baker?
Yes, perfect.
Excellent. Is there a seconder? Thank you, Mr. Have you got another question, Mr. Denham, or are you happy to second? Yes. Thank you, Mr. Denham. Is anyone opposed to the motion? Motion is carried unanimously. Thank you, Mrs. Baker.
Thank you.
My next name on my list is Mr. Tomlinson. And is there someone after Mr. Tomlinson who'd like to come and... Oh, sorry, I didn't say Mrs. Rich yet. Thank you, Mr. Tomlinson. Mr. Tomlinson, Jarrahdale?
Yeah, Jarrahdale,
yeah.
I'd like to move a motion that the SJ Shire Council take a look at the postal voting system and that all councillors rethink about the corruption that happened in the last Shire election, and so it doesn't happen again, and take another vote at the next council OCM to give them time to think about it.
Again, if you just want to read the motion as it appears on the screen, Mr. Tomlinson, make sure you're happy with it once Madam Secretary
I think we
updates it.
might have missed the start of it, Mr President. Perhaps if Mr Tomlinson can repeat the start, that might just help.
I move the SJ Shire Council take a look at the postal voting system and that all councillors rethink about the corruption that happened in the last Shire election.
Have you got it written down, Mr. Tomlinson?
Yeah. Sorry? Shire. SJ Shire.
I think we're changing Char to Shire.
SJ Shire. Yeah, it should say the SJ Shire Council at the beginning. Yeah. Yeah, at the first line it says the SJ Shire or Serpentine Jarrahdale Shire Council. Take a look at.
That should be corruption happening at the last Shire election.
Yep.
Did you want to mention the chair?
Right? 2021, I think it was. Yeah. Yep.
Are you happy with that, Mr Tomlinson?
Yep.
Okay. Is there someone, I was just waiting for the, you happy for me to proceed? Is there someone happy to second that motion as moved by Mr Tomlinson? Thank you, Ms May, Ms May, Mrs May, Mrs Vicky May. Is there anyone, I'll just wait for that, so it's VRCKY? M-A-Y?
VRCKI.
Or VRCKI or Y? I?
Aye.
And then MAY? So we've got a mover and a seconder for that motion. Is there anyone opposed to that motion? Motion is carried unanimously. Thank you, Mr Tomlinson.
Thank you.
Mrs Richards, do you want to come back and move your next motion? Is there anyone else who'd like to move a motion after? Okay, so we'll go Mrs Rich, Mrs Reynolds, Mr Denholm and Ms Dunkley. I've got to write that down, I'll forget. Dennis.
Thank you. I have a number of motions, so just one at the moment.
Thank you, Mrs Rich, that'd be great, yeah.
Thank you. My motion is, as part of the 2025-2026 budget process, Council funds the design and construction, extending the current footpath by approximately 53 metres on the south side of Jarrahdale Road, opposite the Nettleton Road intersection, to provide safe pedestrian access to visitors and residents of Jarrahdale.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Mrs Rich, you happy with that wording? I know it's pretty hard to see.
From what I could see from here, yes.
Okay, do you want it read out to you or are you happy with?
Can you read it out, please?
So move Michelle Rich that as part of the 2025-2026 budget process, Council funds the design and construction extending the current footpath by approximately 53 metres on the south side of Jarrahdale Road, opposite the Nettleton Road intersection, to provide safe pedestrian access to visitors and residents of Jarrahdale.
Thank you.
Happy with that? Thank you. Is there a seconder for that motion? Thank you, Mr Denholm. Is there anyone opposed to the motion? Motion is carried unanimously. Thank you, Mrs Rich. Mrs Reynolds, I think you're the next one. Then Mr Denholm and then Ms Dunkley.
Okay. Sorry, I don't know how they should be worded, so I'm just trying to scribble my best. At the end of this meeting, I request the Council request a detailed investigation be conducted, which will provide a report to be presented at the next available OCM prior to the 2025-26 budget workshops being held in relation to the options of Watkin Road's waste transfer station, using accurate actual costs of the additional motion put forward by Councillor Mack at the February 2025 OCM, followed by an additional public consult providing them with the accurate data and detailed information.
Thank you. Thank you, Mrs Reynolds. Let's wait for that to be fixed up on the screen. I have a question in relation to that. Our next budget workshop is Thursday, so I think it's almost impossible.
Okay.
And I see the Director of Corporate Services smiling, but I do seek...
Sorry, we'll need to reword that then.
At the end of the day, it's your motion. I don't want to... But it'd be remiss of me to allow you to do something that's impossible. So I don't know if there's any
No, that's
thoughts.
fine. We can
Sorry,
reword
Mr
that.
Denham, do you have a question?
Another question to Mrs Reynolds. I think it's an alternative motion, not an additional motion.
It was too. It was an alternate motion. Yep. Thank you.
Mr Reynolds, did you want to have a moment to think, or if you would like to ask some advice from some staff about this? I understand your intent, but I think it can't be achieved because, as I said, we've got a workshop on Thursday night.
Yeah, that's totally fine.
CEO, if you want to... Yeah, Mr President, Ms Reynolds, you could just say to be held at the next, put forward at the next OCM, because there's budget workshops pretty much every month going on now until the budget adoption. So if the report came to council...
That's probably not going to be practical for the next OCM either, is it?
No, the motions get moved tonight, get presented to the next OCM for council to consider.
Okay.
And
Yes,
then the
please.
council could decide then what they want to do with the motion. Do they support it, change it, disagree with it, whatever. Yep.
That sounds okay, thank you.
Again,
then if the council resolves to do it, then we go and do that work. So
Okay, yes, please.
Thank you, Mr CEO. Mrs Reynolds, are you happy with that wording as it is now?
I think so.
Do you want me to read it out?
Yeah, please, if you could.
Okay, so the council requests a detailed investigation to be conducted, or detailed investigation be conducted, yep,
Yes.
which will provide a report to be presented at the next available ordinary council meeting prior to the 25-26 budget workshops. So I think we're going to take that out. Was that?
Yes, please.
Next available ordinary council meeting in relation to the options. So we'll keep in relation. Yep. Yep. So, Mr Reynolds, I'll start again. So the council request a detailed investigation be conducted which will provide a report to be presented at the next available ordinary council meeting in relation to the options of Watkins Road Waste Transfer Station using accurate actual costs of the additional motion.
Alternate motion.
Alternate motion,
Please.
yep, thank you. Put forward by Councillor Mack at the February 2025 ordinary council meeting, followed by additional public consultation, providing them with an accurate data and detailed information.
Yes, please.
Are you happy with that?
Yes.
Thank you. Is there a member of the public or a councillor? Thank you, Mr Denham. Are you another spelling mistake, or are you happy to second it?
I'm happy with that.
Thank you, Mr Denham. Is anyone opposed to the motion? Motion is carried unanimously. Thank you, Mrs Reynolds.
Thank you. I
Mr
do have a
Denham.
second one at the end if there's
Yep,
time.
that's right, yep. Just before Mr Denham puts forward his motion, is there any other motions apart from Mrs Rich and Mrs Reynolds? No one else? Sorry. You're up next, Ms Dunkley, sorry.
I've got two, so I'll be join the line.
Okay.
I might need some help from the Shire officers, but basically that the Shire, SJ Shire purchased 2 fit-for-purpose drones and trained some staff to operate to their drones' full potential. Basically, we haven't... Can I explain it?
I think that motion is fine as is, but if you want to, yep, go for it. Explain
Yeah, basically, who do I talk to?
talk to me.
Talk to anyone. You talk to all of us.
Basically, we've got a 4-year-old drone and the Shire's growing, and so that I want to put it to council because I know the decision here goes to council for a decision, but something has to be done in upgrading our fleet of drones, shall we say, because it's modern technology. I don't know. Does that seem right?
The only question I have is, does it have to be a specific type of drone in terms of the capability? Is it, is it for looking for people? Is it for animals?
No,
is it for...
everything, because that's the whole idea, multi-purpose for infrastructure, for planning, for events, everything. So that it's, but you need, I realise a proper one, but everything's done by drone. I don't want to get into debate, but I just want it worded correctly to go to council. So it's multi-purpose, fit for use. That's why I mean fit for use, because it's got to be, you don't want a drone for one specific thing. There's roads to check, there's pools to check, there's fires, there's everything.
So could it be something along the lines of that council purchases 2 drones to assist in the business undertaking of the Shire or capability of the Shire or something like that? Make it broad?
Yeah, I want it broad, yeah. It's just that the number of drones and multi-use, but fit for purpose. That's why I put fit for purpose.
Ms Berry, did you want to assist?
Yeah.
Possible to add a little bit on the end there, to operate the drones to their full potential and within regulations.
Yeah, right. I thought that's why training might cover that, because that.
Sometimes the common sense stuff doesn't work.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and there's CASA and stuff you have to comply with drones. Yep. Okay, so that council purchased 2 multi-purpose drones and trained staff to operate the drones to their full potential and in line with regulations?
Yes.
Is that, yeah.
That's fine.
Yep, I think that's okay.
Thank you.
As long as you're happy, it's your motion.
Always
That
happy.
being the case, Ms Berry, you happy to second it?
Yes.
Thank you, Ms Berry. We'll just wait for that. So it's Kelly Berry. Are you happy with that, Mr Deno?
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyone opposed to the motion? Motion is carried unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms Dunkley.
Okay, so can we have that the council, sorry, the Shire amend the electronic version of the 2003-2004 annual report to include information regarding library services, to ensure the transparency across all services within the Shire, and that library services be reinstated in the organisational chart, again in the electronic version of the annual report.
Thank you, Ms Dunkley. We'll just wait for that that worked quite well that time.
Sorry, is that what I said?
Yeah, you said 2023.
Oh, 23. No, 23. 23.
Yeah, I think that's just the computer making a mistake.
Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Ms Dunkley, are you happy with that wording? I'm happy to read it out if you...
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind.
No, that's probably best for the recording anyway. So that the Shire amend the electronic version of the 2023-2024 annual report to include information regarding library services to ensure the transparency across all services within the Shire, and that library services be reinstated in the organisational chart in the electronic version of the annual report. Are you happy with that?
Yes, I am.
Yeah. And, sorry, that was, you were happy? You're happy with, yeah,
yes.
Thank you,
Yes,
sorry.
yes,
That's
I
my hearing. Is there someone happy to second that motion? Thank you, Ms Berry. So Kelly Berry. Is anyone opposed to that motion?
Not opposed, but could I possibly ask a question?
Certainly, Councillor Duggan.
Would there be a concern if the electronic version then is not in line with the printed version?
Thank you for the question. Probably a governance thing, so I don't know if the Director of Corporate Services or the CEO would be happy to answer that. Mr CEO.
Thank you, Mr President. Thanks for the question. I think that when the council considers the motion, there'll be a range of options the council might be able to do. That might include putting an amendment or something else there as well. So I think if this is the motion the community wants, then that should, happen, and we could then consider that as it comes to council and see how that can be achieved, and give council some options for that. The council might choose to print a new copy of the annual report or something like that. So I think if that's the community's motion, that's a good thing, and we can work on the process of how it is considered.
Thank you, Mr CEO. Thank you, Councillor Duggan. I will call again. Is anyone opposed to the motion? Motion is carried unanimously. Thank you, Ms Dunkley. Now, my sheet is blank, because I know Mrs Rich has got some more. Mrs Denham, do you have another one? Okay, you got one more. Mrs Reynolds, one more. Mrs Rich, if you're happy, what we might do is go to Mrs Reynolds, Mr Denham, they can do their one each, then you can sit at the table instead of having to come backwards and forwards. Thank you. Thanks, Mrs Reynolds.
Thank you. My second motion, I'm open to assistance again with wording. I would like to request... Sorry, I brought the wrong one. Apologies for that. I would like to request that Council request a detailed investigation and provide available options for rectification of the ongoing traffic issues and illegal traffic movements outside of Court Grammar School on Soldiers and Bishop Roads, taking into consideration that Court Grammar School is constructing additional classrooms, a school and public swimming pool, and increasing number of students annually without any additional parking or road infrastructure to support this growth.
I think that motion is fine as worded. We'll just get the team to make the grammatical changes, and then as long as you're happy with it, we'll put it, see if someone is happy to second it.
Can I suggest that you might say Court Grammar School, outside Court Grammar School on Soldiers and Bishop Road?
What about intersection?
Yeah, is it along the sides of the roads, intersection? Is it all that?
It's on the intersection. It's on the corner of the intersection.
Okay, so outside Court Grammar School at the intersection of Soldiers and Bishop Road?
Yes.
Yep. So you said consideration that Court Grammar School is constructing additional classrooms?
They are, yes.
Yep. At the school?
Yes.
And a public swimming pool? An increasing number of students annually without any additional parking or road infrastructure?
Correct.
To support.
Are you happy with that? Do you want me to read the whole motion in its entirety for you? I'm happy to. The council requests a detailed investigation and provide available options for rectification of the ongoing traffic issues and illegal traffic movements outside of Court Grammar School at the intersection of Soldiers and Bishop Roads, taking into consideration that Court Grammar School is constructing additional classrooms at the school and a public swimming pool and increasing number of students annually without any additional parking or road infrastructure to support this growth. You happy with that, Mrs Reynolds?
Yes. I don't know if it's important to say that the swimming pool is for the school and going to be open to the public, I believe.
It's your motion, Mrs Reynolds.
I'm just trying to work out how to word it.
I think the intent is there. Whether I think it's probably semantics. I don't know if I need some.
Okay.
Sorry,
Thank
Mr
you.
Tomlinson, are you happy to second it, or are you going to?
Can I just ask a question?
Yep.
Does the Shire have any input into construction and works with the school?
Well, we have to give them building approval. That's correct, isn't it, Director?
So has building approval been given for the classrooms in the pool?
My understanding is it has been.
So was there any additional parking request done during that approval?
Director, are you happy to answer that question?
Certainly, thank you for the question. So it's not yet finished in its construction, but they are building a perimeter road which will shift all of the teacher parking to essentially run parallel along the railway line at the back of the school, and teachers will actually be exiting the site at a new crossing onto Soldiers Road, trying to get pressure off the intersection of Soldiers Road and Bishop Road. So it's not yet open, but they are building it at the moment, and it is essentially an attempt, because you're trying to essentially accommodate a K-12 school off one sort of very, very, very sort of low level of service intersection with no real sort of priority to manage that traffic at that morning peak and afternoon peak.
May I comment? That sounds great, but it's only moving the teachers from one car park to another. It's not giving the public any further access, and it's not stopping congestion because the teachers aren't leaving school or coming to school at the same time that the children are.
Thank you, Director, for that answer. You've got... Sorry, do you want to... I'm going to call for a second. Are you happy with that before...
Could I ask Mr Reynolds a question?
Yes?
Do you think in your motion that you need to include a public swimming pool? It's during the school, start of school and finishing, constructing additional classrooms at the school is the relevant in a public swimming pool. I don't know. I think you get more emphasis on the traffic with additional classrooms and dropping the swimming pool.
That's a question for you, Mrs Reynolds. It's your motion, Mrs Reynolds. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm happy to take the swimming pool out of it, please.
Okay. Thank you, Mr Denholm. So just before we do that, I'll read it out again. So that Council requests a detailed investigation and provide available options for rectification of the ongoing traffic issues and illegal traffic movements outside of Court Grammar School at the intersection of Soldiers and Bishop Roads, taking into consideration that Court Grammar School is constructing additional classrooms at the school and increasing number of students annually without any additional parking or road infrastructure to support this growth. So it's now moved by Mrs Reynolds, seconded by Mr Denholm. Is anyone opposed to that motion? Motion is carried unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Reynolds. Now, you've got no other motions? No. Mrs Reynolds, you've got no other motions you'd like to move? No. Mr Denholm, you got one, no more after this?
No, it's fine. Okay. After this one, probably need a hand again, but traffic management's a problem. I think it costs the Shire a lot of money to outsource it. And what raised this point was the lady that organises, Sandra Hawkins. It was costing the log chop $18,000 for traffic management. So I wanted a motion to bring a report to council, because it's their decision, investigating insourcing traffic management. Because as far as I know, we've got all the signs and everything like that. So, and the cost benefits to the ratepayers. Fraser, got any ideas on this one?
So Mr Denholm, that's okay. Mr Denholm, so your motion is for the Shire of Serpentine, Jarrahdale to in-house, deliver in-house road traffic management for all events, something like that?
Yeah.
Is it just for events or for other things?
No.
Tree pruning?
For works and everything. We've got we've got the equipment. I just can't understand why we don't do it labour-wise.
Maybe it's that council a report be presented to council investigating the options to bring traffic management services in-house.
In-house, yeah.
For all activities.
For all activities, yeah, not just social ones, but you guys do roadworks and trees and storms and stuff like that. That's the basis of it. even accidents, whatever.
In-house delivery, in-house
Services, traffic management
yeah,
services for all activities.
Are you happy with that, Mr. Holmes? So it says that
Could you
council
read it, please?
investigate in-house traffic management services for activities. I think there's you got a question, Mr. Tomlinson?
I was just curious, would you be asking for a cost on that to see difference as to, you'd have to look at how many staff you'd have to put on, and if it's after hours and stuff as well, you got to look at overtime rates and all that, so.
Yeah, that's why I asked for a report.
Yeah,
So
it reports on
pros and cons go.
financial cost. Yep.
So do you want to add a part to that, Mr. Denholm, saying that council investigate in-house traffic management services for all activities and a report to come back to council, or I don't know if I need to say, what do you think?
Yeah, I had it initially bring a report to council investigating insourcing or in-house traffic management and the cost benefits to the ratepayers, if any.
Yeah, it's good to include the cost benefits to the ratepayers. That's good.
Yeah. Sorry, Ms. Berry, do you have a question?
Just a question for Mr. Dennis.
Yep.
You say all activities, are you talking about just Shire activities, or are you also talking about community activities, because you mentioned Electors?
Both, all activities.
Because that might be construed to just Shire activities as
No.
okay, so you
Yeah, for all activities.
all activities,
For all, yeah.
including community activities? Add something extra just so it's black and
Well,
white.
I need help here, Mr. CEO, but my problem is a $20,000 grant, $18,000 goes out
Traffic management.
of the community
That's
to a
right.
traffic management company.
Yep.
If it was the Shire,
Yep.
the equipment and the work.
Yep.
Yeah.
So maybe the council receives a report investigating. Yep. Council receives a report investigating providing traffic management services in-house, including a cost-benefit analysis for the ratepayers.
Can I ask if there's councillors here, what wording helps them when because ultimately it comes to the councillors and the president to vote on it, so it's defined in what I'm trying to achieve, just whether there is a cost benefit. It's just the wording on it when it goes to council, that's all.
In the report, Mr. Denholm, it'll have almost the bottom line up front will be cost, because that's what we care about. So I'd say that the report would give you what you're after.
Right. Could we add?
Just so that it incorporates that, because otherwise it might perceive to be just the Shire's own activities.
Can we include community activities or something along those lines, please, so it's crystal clear, transparent?
Yep. For all Shire and community activities? Something like that. Mrs. Reynolds, do you have a question?
I was just thinking, if it's only a cost analysis that you're seeking.
Well, I can't seek a decision because they make the decision.
That's right.
A bit like the Watkins Road thing, just bring the figures forward for the councillors to make a decision.
If it's just figures in how much it would cost to have a team all the time, then maybe whether it could be booked by community services or the community events, maybe that would need to be something that could go into an annual calendar on a decision.
There's a variation on the wording of it because there's a lot of youngsters in Serpentine Jarrahdale, so not just a team, but to have, I'm all for people being able to be multi-used in infrastructure, etc., from area to area. So if we have a big storm, they've got trees and everything to get off the road, well, suddenly guys that are on the mower can go and do traffic management or whatever. Yep. I don't know.
I think that motion there couches what you're after. Yep. Okay, that being the case, is someone happy to second the motion? Lots of people. Thank you, Mrs. Reynolds. Anyone opposed? Thank you. Motion is carried unanimously.
Thank you.
I'll just confirm what I'm minded to do is let Mrs. Rich come and do all her motions at once, unless there's someone else in the go who'd like to move a motion. Thank you, Mrs. Rich. All yours.
Thank you. My next motion. As part of the 2025-2026 budget process, that council funds all needed verge tree pruning on the following roads: Light Body Road, Shanley Road, Cougley Road, Feast Road, Summerfield Road, Gull Road, Scrivener Road, Selkirk Road, Jarrah Road, Yangetti Road South, Punrack Road, Utley Road, Westcott Road, Henderson Road, Elliott Road, Rapids Road and Hall Road.
Yes, Mr Denholm.
Hall Road, just correct me, you guys, there's two Hall Roads. There's the Hall Road, the Alcoa Road, access road is Hall Road. Maybe you need to put Hall Road in what part of the Shire. I'm pretty sure there's two Hall Roads.
Different spelling for both of those Hall Roads. One is H-A-L-L, one is H-A-U-L.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Mrs Rich, are you happy with that? I can read it out. I think they've got a copy of your motion anyway, so it should be spot on. So it's Light Body Road, Shanley Road, Cougley Road, Feast Road with a capital F, Summerfield, Gull, Schravner, Selkirk, Jarrah, Yangetti Road South, Punrack Road, Utley Road, Westcott Road, Henderson Road, Elliott Road, Rapids Road and Hall Road.
That's right, thank you.
Thank you. Is there a member of the public or council happy to second this motion? Thank you, Ms Berry. Is there anyone opposed to the motion? Mr Denholm, you're opposed?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Mrs Rich, I'll just pause. Motion is all updated.
Thank you.
Are you happy to speak for the motion, please?
The reason I've brought this motion this evening is that these are all the roads in the southern end of the Shire where the speed limits have been dropped from 110 k's an hour to 50 k's an hour. Given the community forums held over the last few months in the south end of the Shire and the feedback from quite a few of our transport businesses about damage that is received to their trucks with overhanging branches, etc. on these roads. Now that these roads have a speed limit of 50 k's an hour, the Shire does not have to expend traffic management funding to actually do the road verge trimming on these roads. So there's a cost saving to the Shire to be able to enable them now to actually do the road verge trimming in that area. So that's why I've brought this motion this evening.
Thank you, Mrs Rich. Ms Berry, do you want to speak for the motion or are you happy to reserve? Thank you. Mr Denholm, do you want to speak against? Oh, sorry, Mr...
Yep. Just quick. Is there a lot of other roads in the Shire in the same situation?
So, Mr Thomas, if you want to speak against, you can have the opportunity to speak against. So, Mr Denholm wants to speak against, so I'll let Mr Denholm speak.
As Mr Tomlinson just brought up, I wish to speak against it because there's many other roads in the Shire. These all appear down in the South Ward. Yeah, no, I have a problem with the all being down there, and there's a lot of other roads, and also prioritising these in 1 year, getting them all done. I think that's unrealistic. So yeah, I don't totally agree with that one.
Thank you, Mr Denholm. Does anyone like to speak for the motion? Mr Tomlinson, I'm happy if you, do you want to add anything? Mr Denholm just probably made the same comment, but I'm happy for you to have your voice heard.
Just seem to be fine, it's just in the South Ward, not the rest of the Shire, that's all.
Okay, so pretty much what Mr... or similar to what Mr... Okay. No one else would like to speak for the motion? Ms Berry, if you'd like to use your right of reply that you reserved.
I guess it's just bringing attention to roads that aren't needing it. And if there are other roads in the Shire that need it, then other motions should be put forward with those road names as well. But it's just drawing attention to somebody who said these roads need some attention.
Thank you, Ms Berry. Is there anyone like to speak against the motion? Thank you, Mrs Rich. Would you like to close debate, please?
Thank you. As I stated before, all of these roads have recently had or are having their road speeds reduced from 110 kilometres an hour to 50 kilometres an hour, which enables the Shire to actually do the verge tree pruning on these roads without having to expend money on traffic management to be able to do this work, which have not been able to do in the past. So I'm happy to put this motion to the vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs Rich. Green for yes, so all those in favour, please extend your hand with your green bit on the end of it. And all those against, white. The motion is carried, something 3? 6-3. Thank you. Thank you, Mrs Rich. Your next motion.
Thank you. As part of the 2025-2026 budget process, that Council funds the engagement of external consultants to undertake community consultation, investigation, concept design and costings for implementation of appropriate traffic calming treatments along Jarrahdale Road between Nettleton Road and Kingsbury Drive within the Jarrahdale town site to better manage the anticipated increase in traffic and pedestrian movements in preparation for Trails Town status and Tonkin Highway extension.
Thank you, Mrs Rich. We'll just wait for a moment to get that updated. Thank you, Madam Secretary. Mrs Rich, are you happy with... Hang on, I think we've got... I think you've got a new calling, Mr Denham. I think you should become an English teacher. We happy? So do you want me to, I'll read it out for you, Mrs Rich. So it's as part of the 2025-2026 budget process that council funds the engagement of external consultants to undertake community consultation, investigation, concept design and costings for implementation of appropriate traffic calming treatments along Jarrahdale Road between Nettleton Road and Kingsbury Drive within the Jarrahdale town site to better manage the anticipated increase in traffic and pedestrian movements in preparation for Trails Town status and Tonkin Highway extension.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I've just had confirmation from someone smarter than me, is undertake a community consultation investigation.
The way I have written it is to undertake community consultation, investigation for what treatments are needed, concept design and costings for the implementation of appropriate traffic calming treatments.
And it is your motion, Mrs Rich, so if you're happy with that, that's fine. Is there someone happy to second the motion? Thank you, Ms Dunkley. Is there anyone opposed to the motion? Motion is carried unanimously. I might just ask respectfully, Mrs Rich, how many more motions you've got? It is 9:35 and there might be people that need a comfort break, so I am minded to have a comfort break depending on how many motions.
Another 7.
Another 7. Is there a councillor happy to move a motion for us to have a 5-minute adjournment break, or are people happy to keep going?
I'm happy to move that.
Happy to move that, to have a 5-minute adjournment break?
Yes.
You happy to second it? Okay. Anyone opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. I have it as 9:36. We'll be back at 9:41. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you, members of the gallery. It is 9:41, so that's 5 minutes. Mrs Rich, back to you, please, for your next motion.
Thank you. As part of the 2025-2026 budget process, that council is provided with the costs to carry out all shoulder reconstruction and remedial works for the following roads: Light Body Road, Shanley Road, Cougley Road, Feast Road, Summerfield Road, Gull Road, Scrivener Road, Selkirk Road, Jarrah Road, Yangetti Road South, Punrack Road, Elliott Road, Westcott Road, Henderson Road, Elliott Road, Rapids Road, Hall Road, with three roads to be completed in each of the following financial years: 2025-26, 2026-27, 2027-28, 2028-29, 2029-30, 2030-31. The list of roads is the same as the previous ones.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Mrs Ritchie, you happy with that? I can read it out.
Yes, thank you.
Yep, as part of the 25-26 budget process, council is provided with the cost to carry out all shoulder reconstruction and remedial works for the following roads: Light Body, Shanley, Cougley, Feast, Summerfield, Gull, Shriver, Snellkirk, Jarrah, Yangetti Road South, Punrack Road, Utley Road, Westcott Road, Henderson Road, Elliott Road, Rapids Road, Hall Road, with 3 roads to be completed in each of the following financial years: 25, 26, 26, 27, 27, 28, 28, 29, 29, 30 and 2030, 31. Are you happy with that motion?
Thank you.
Thank you. Are you happy to second, Mr Danaheim?
No, I was going to ask the leader a question. Who's going to prioritise which road?
I think the Shire officers are quite capable of prioritising which roads from the list.
Does that need to be put in the motion?
No, it's Mrs Rich's motion. It's up to her.
I don't think it does need to be. I think they're quite capable of doing that.
Thank you, Mrs Rich. Is there a person who is happy to second the motion? Thank you, Mr Denholm. Anyone opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. Next motion, please, Mrs Rich.
As part of the 2025-2026 budget process, that council funds the design and construction of a replacement fence around the stormwater retention basin between 14 and 18 Marjadell Loop in Mardella.
Sorry.
Mardja.
So the motion as written is, as part of the 25-26 budget process, that council funds the design and construction of a replacement fence around the stormwater retention basin between 14 and 18 Marja Loop in Mardella. You happy with that, Mrs Rich?
Yes, thank you.
Is there someone happy to second that motion? Thank you, Mrs Reynolds. Is anyone opposed? You're opposed, Mr Denholm?
For the purpose of listening to why that fence needs replacing, I'm not familiar with.
Thank you, Mrs Denholm. Mrs Rich, would you like to open debate, please?
Thank you. There is quite a large stormwater retention basin at that location, which used to have a fence around it, which was removed due to its disrepair by the Shire and has not been replaced. So I'm asking to have that fence replaced.
Thank you, Mrs Rich. Mrs Reynolds, you seconded the motion. Would you like to speak or reserve? Okay. Mr Denholm, do you want to speak against?
No.
No? Okay.
Oh, see, I didn't know it was unsafe and it was a body of water that was unsafe, so
You don't want to be heard?
was just explaining it.
Yep. Okay. Thanks. We'll put the matter to the vote then. Is anyone opposed to the motion? That motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. Mrs Rich, next one.
As part of the 2025-2026 budget process, that council funds the engagement of external consultants to undertake detailed design, land acquisition and costings for the implementation of appropriate traffic roundabout at the intersection of Hopeland Road and Carnup Road, Hopeland.
Okay, so the wording then, Mrs Rich, is as part of the 2025-2026 budget process, that council funds the engagement of external consultants to undertake detailed design, land acquisition and costings for the implementation of appropriate traffic roundabout at the intersection of Hopeland Road and Carnup Road in Hopeland. You happy with that?
Thank you.
Is there a member of the public or a councillor who's happy to second that motion? Thank you, Mr Denholm. Anyone opposed? Thank you. Motion is carried unanimously. I think we're up to date. Next one, please, Mrs Rich.
Thank you. That council requests the CEO to amend Council Policy 1.1.14, Forums of Council, Policy Concept Forums, Question and Answer, Agenda Forums and Workshops, and Council Policy 3.3.11, Recording of in-person council and committee meetings, to A, to open question and answer sessions to the public, B, to open policy concept forums to the public, C, to open all workshops and forums of council, including but not limited to budget workshops, to the public, D, to record and publish the recordings of 1, all question and answer sessions, 2, policy concept forums, and 3, all other forums and workshops open to the public by the 30th of April 2025.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Mrs Rich, the motion as written reads that Council requests to CEO, I think it meant to be just that Council requests CEO to amend, or to CEO to amend Council Policy 1.1.14, Forums of Council Policy Concept Forums, Question, Answer, Agenda Forums and Workshops, and Council Policy 3.3.11, Recording of in-person council and committee meetings, to A, to open question and answer sessions to the public, B, to open policy concept forums to the public, C, to open all workshops and forums of council, including but not limited to budget workshops to the public, D, to record and publish the recordings of 1, all question and answer sessions, 2, policy concept forums, and 3, all other forums and workshops open to the public, and by the 30th of April 2025. Are you happy with that?
Yes, thank you.
So, Ms Berry, have you got a question, or happy to second?
Not happy to second at the moment. I'm just wondering, I don't know if I want to object to it, but I'm just wondering if we can get some more background to this motion.
Sure. Mrs Rich, are you happy to provide some background?
Yes, I can provide background. There has been a similar motion come to council in the past, and there is always quite a bit of commentary within the community around budget time. And having myself sat on the other side and understand the process that is undertaken, councillors are provided with a draft budget from staff. The community never get to cite that draft budget. It comes to budget workshops. Council remove items and add items, and then it comes to council in the public forum for the community to actually view. Council as a concept is actually not meant to make decisions behind closed doors, but with the adding and removal of items from the draft budget as presented by the officers to the council, they are in effect making decisions behind closed doors in their dealing with the draft budget. So to enable the community to see that process and to see where items that they have an interest in fall within what the officers put forward in the draft budget, and see the process and understand the process that the councillors then go through, it would be beneficial to have those workshops open to the community to view, not to make have any input, but to view so that they can see and understand the process. Again, with the question and answer forums for the budget, for the OCM special council meeting, etc. Now that we have motions moved en bloc by council, there is no opportunity for the community to see that council either discuss or ask questions in around some of those items. So it would be beneficial for the community to actually be able to attend and view the Q&A sessions to be able, so they can see the questions that are asked by the councillors of the items on the agenda. The same with the policy concept forums.
Sorry,
it would actually give people
I think we're going into somewhat of a
understanding.
debate here, Mrs Rich. Has that answered your question? Or would you like Mrs Rich to continue?
Mrs Rich may as well finish.
Okay, thanks.
That's
Thank
it.
you, Mrs Rich.
I'm happy.
You happy? Okay. Are you happy to second it, Mr Denholm, or another? Yeah, go on.
It might be the CEO rather than the mover, but does the council make a final decision no matter what we vote on, right? Will that then, there's a council election in October, so will then that be revisited, or how does it happen?
Thank you, Mr President. That's right, so the motions tonight get presented to the next ordinary council meeting, and the council can consider those and determine what they like. In terms of policies, they wouldn't change after the election. The policies would continue forward. We do review the policies every 2 years, so in 2 years' time there'd be a review at that point in time, but the policies don't change linked to the election.
Thank you, Mr CEO.
Sorry, Mr President, unless council resolves to do that.
Is there someone who is happy to second the motion as it is? Thank you, Ms Berry. Is anyone opposed to the motion? Motion is carried unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next.
That Council request the Chief Executive Officer present a draft policy to Council before September 2025 to increase the retention by 50% of trees during all subdivision processes.
Thank you, Mrs Rich. So the motion is now written as that Council requests the Chief Executive Officer present a draft policy to Council before September 2025 to increase the retention by 50% of trees during all subdivision processes. Are you happy with that?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Is there a member? Thank you, Ms Berry. Is there anyone opposed to this motion? Sorry. Mr Denholm, are you opposed?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Mr Denholm. Mrs Rich, would you like to open debate, please?
Thank you. As a Shire, you have a urban and rural forest strategy where the retention of trees is to hold a status quo, which is failing dismally given the amount of construction and development that is coming through the Shire. So we're not holding the status quo whatsoever. So my motion is to try and claw back some of what is destined to be total destruction and try and retain some of that large canopy cover that we do have in some of the subdivision areas.
Thank you, Mrs Rich. Ms Berry, you seconded. Would you like to speak or reserve?
Could I speak, please?
Thank you.
The Shire is growing, that's inevitable. With the many more subdivisions that are going in, it becomes a concrete jungle, it becomes bitumen, it becomes hot. The more trees we can keep, we'll start to counter that effect. So, yes, that's why I'm for this motion.
Yep. Thank you, Ms Berry. Mr Denholm, would you like to speak against?
Yeah, my problem is with 50% of the trees, retention, the key word there, because relocation or the replanting or trade-offs or whatever isn't taken into account. So, and then we've got Alcoa doing 2,500 hectares of trees, just totally flattening it. So I agree with, I think the retention by 50% of all trees is going to be a bit hard on the developers. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr Denholm. Is anyone like to speak for the motion? Thank you. Mrs Rich, would you like to close debate, please?
I'm happy to send it straight to the vote, thank you.
Thank you. All those in favour of the motion, please extend your green cards. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm calling for Mr Denholm, or are you now going to go for? So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4. Against? Motion is carried 5-1. No harassing members of the public, please, Mr Denholm. Thank you, Mrs Rich. 2 more?
2 more.
Thank you.
That Council prioritise tree retention in road upgrade design, maintenance and construction to maintain the current level of canopy coverage within all Shire managed road reserves as of the 1st of April 2025.
Thank you, Mrs Rich.
The word tree should be in there. Councillor Prioritise tree retention. Where you got the, I think it should be prioritise tree in the, yep.
So the motion as written is that council prioritise tree retention in road upgrade design, maintenance and construction to maintain the current level of canopy coverage within all Shire managed road reserves as of the 1st of April 2025.
After the word design, it needs to have a comma.
Yep. You happy with that, Mrs Rich?
Yes, thank you.
If so, can I please have someone to second that motion? Thank you, Mrs Reynolds. Anyone opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. Back to you, Mrs Rich, for your next motion.
Thank you. As part of the 2025-2026 budget process, that council funds and designs that council funds the design and construction of the remaining substandard 3.7 kilometres of Elliott Road east of Hopeland Road intersection.
Excellent.
Question for the mover, to save a bit of time.
Hang on, Mr Denholm. So, Mrs Richards, as part of the 25-26 budget process, that council funds the design and construction of the remaining substandard 3.7 kilometres of Elliott Road east of Hopeland Road intersection. You happy with that?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, Mr Denholm, do you have a question?
Just a question to the mover. Is that a particular section, is it? Who decides that the remaining substandard 3.7 kilometres, or is it one particular section?
It is one particular section. The section of Elliott Road up to that area has already been upgraded, and there is a remaining 3.7 kilometres of road to be upgraded to reach the intersection of Hopeland Road.
Thank you, Mrs Rich. Is there... Thank you, Mr Denholm. I thought you might have had another question. Thank you for seconding, Mr Denholm. Is there anyone opposed to the motion? Motion is carried unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs Rich. I'll make another call. Is there anyone who'd like to come forward and move any further motions? That brings us to agenda item number 4, which is the closure of the general meeting of electors. I declare the meeting closed at 10:05 p.m. and thank all the members of the public this evening for your involvement in this meeting. It is a meeting for the community, so thank you very much for your time to stay back tonight.